Alright, picture this. The morning starts with a bang. Miho, fresh out of bed, literally kicks her deadbeat husband right onto the floor. And get this, she catches him using her expensive skincare products. Next thing you know, she's dragging him by the hair and giving him the beating of his life. Today's a huge day, though it's her husband's court date. As he's heading out, she doesn't hold back. If you lose this case, don't even think about coming home. Now, Miho is no joke. She's the hottest nurse at the hospital, and everyone is jealous that she snagged a lawyer husband. But the reality? It's definitely not a fairy tale. Her husband is basically on a perpetual losing streak. We cut to him sitting on the steps with his father-in-law, looking completely defeated. The father-in-law is about to offer some comforting words when Miho calls. But after losing this case, how can he pick up the phone? He pushes the phone toward his father-in-law, as he is really afraid of her. He can't even think about answering. He shoves the phone at his father-in-law. But even he's scared of his own daughter. Miho demands to know how the court case went. When she finds out he screwed up again, she absolutely loses it. It turns out that this case involves a massive amount of their savings that her husband was scammed out of. If he doesn't win, they're basically going to be living on air from now on. Later, after a long shift, Miho calls her husband, but he refuses to pick up the phone. She is furious and shouts, "How dare you hang up my phone?" She is so angry that she has some wine to help her relax a bit. At that moment, her father came out of the room stealthily. "What is that, Dad?" Her dad stammers, making up a story about throwing away the trash. Miho isn't buying it. She comes straight out with it. "If Chang-ho and I get divorced, who are you going to side with?" The answer makes her question everything. How can Chang-ho live without his dad? Is she being betrayed by her own father? After coming downstairs, Dad immediately gives the clothes to Chang-ho. "Where is Miho?" "She's waiting for you because she wants to punish you." Hearing that, he would not dare to go home even if he had more courage. What else interesting will happen to this family? However, this fierce woman has moments of gentleness. Today is the day her husband gets paid. How much money is there? So, what was Chang-ho up to last night? He lost that crucial court case, couldn't recover the money, and was too ashamed to go home. But then, out of nowhere, he's able to pull together a huge sum of money? What's the deal? Turns out, last night, Chang-ho landed a murder case. And get this, the client who hired him is none other than the mayor of the city. At first, Chang-ho straight up refuses. Why would a big shot like the mayor want a third-rate lawyer like him? We're talking about a case with, like, a 10% chance of winning. Seeing Chang-ho's suspicion, the mayor tells him he doesn't need a brilliant lawyer. He needs a mouthpiece. In plain English, he needs a lawyer who will blindly follow orders. He just needs him to do as he is told. Super fast. Thanks to the mayor's connections, Chang-ho is at the jail where they are locked up, and inside a secret room, the VIP lounge in the prison, the three murderous tycoons are chilling, drinking wine like it's water. The warden is standing by, serving them. That's when Chang-ho is brought to them. Seeing the three tycoons, he bends over backwards, handing them his business card. They couldn't care less. Seeing Chang-ho's humble and respectful attitude, the three of them are all smiles. But then, the leader gets a phone call. The person on the other end says they have evidence that proves their guilt in the murder. Hearing this, the three of them look freaked out. They tell Chang-ho to leave, but before he goes, he tosses a listening device into a nearby trash can. Back outside, he puts on his headphones and hears that the black box from their getaway car is with the wife of one of the tycoons. From their conversation, he finds out there is an accomplice on the outside who hasn't been caught yet. Then, he reports what he heard to the mayor. Turns out, the mayor didn't hire Chang-ho to help the three tycoons. He wants to get his hands on evidence of their crimes, so he can break free from the tycoons' control over him. Quickly, the two of them head to the wife of one of the tycoons, but they get ambushed by a mysterious man in black. What's life like for the super rich in Korea? Bottles of wine that cost millions of won are like water to them. They even use money as a toy. Even if their murderer is locked up, the warden is still waiting on them hand and foot. To destroy the evidence in this woman's hands, they order a hit. They want her silenced permanently. In the office, the staff suddenly hears a blood-curdling scream and rushes upstairs. Chang-ho gets there fast and uses a fire extinguisher to break down the door. But the woman is already unconscious. He runs to the window and sees a man in black taking off. The woman is waking up, but when she sees the mayor, she is obviously terrified. After patching her up, Chang-ho starts grilling her about the location of the dashcam footage. "What are you talking about? What dashcam?" Seeing her play dumb, he plays the recording of her and her husband. That gets her to spill the truth. As Chang-ho is about to get the dashcam, he asks her who the remaining accomplice is. After a long pause, the woman says the name Chae-soon. The mayor, standing nearby, explains that Chae-soon is the editor-in-chief of a newspaper, and all three suspects are close to him. Plus, the victim and Chae-soon had a conflict when the victim was still alive. After that, Chang-ho and the mayor split up. Chang-ho takes the woman to a temple and gets the USB drive with the dashcam footage. Back home, he watches the video. The three tycoons were threatening Professor Joe to retract his published paper, but Professor Joe refused, saying, "I will expose you." As a result, the tycoons murdered him. but Chang-ho has no idea what paper they are talking about. Before going to bed, he asks Miho if she remembers what tomorrow is. Turns out it's their 3rd wedding anniversary. Chang-ho wants to take Miho out for dinner. The next evening, he takes Miho and his father-in-law to a fancy restaurant. During dinner, his phone rings. It's a cop. The cop asks him to bring the USB drive to a meeting. He doesn't want to blow off anything important. And so he goes outside to meet. Outside, an employee offers him a cup of coffee. He takes it without thinking. While driving, he takes a sip, and soon he starts hallucinating. The world starts spinning, and his car goes out of control, accelerating non-stop. After a struggle, the car rolls several times on the road. After the doctors save his life, he wakes up to realize that somehow, miraculously, he's been labeled a genius con artist. This news goes viral online. Now everyone knows his name, cops and criminals alike, and they're all in shock. The police find a huge stash of white powder and gold bars in his law office. Now, the cops are demanding answers, but he has no idea what is going on. When he woke up, he'd somehow transformed into the notorious con artist, Big Mouse. Just like that, he's officially under investigation. In just 2 days, he's gone from a lawyer to a prisoner. From now on, even if he can clear his name, this whole thing has completely destroyed his life. In a dark room, a group of death row inmates is hanging a man. The man begs and cries, "I was wrong. Please, spare me." All he gets are sinister smiles. One of the inmates steps forward, ignoring his pleas, and kicks the chair out from under him. With no support, he can only struggle in agony, while the other inmates coldly watch. A sudden accident leaves a man on the brink of death. On the way to the hospital, he remembers the promise he made to his wife, a promise that will now be his biggest regret, forever unfulfilled. In a daze, he remembers his college days. At the sports festival, the girl he had a crush on was doing the opening ceremony, and when he saw her smile, he was head over heels. He decided to join the high jump to get her attention. He firmly grips the pole and runs towards his goal. "The biggest problem in my life is that I don't even understand myself." At the crucial moment, he gets unlucky. The pole snaps in midair, and he crashes onto the mat. But in a stroke of luck, his crush, glowing with sunlight, comes running towards him. "Let's get divorced." His wife's words jolt Chang-ho awake in his hospital bed. He opens his eyes and sees his wife and father-in-law. He sighs in relief that he's alive and she hasn't divorced him yet. Then he remembers the serious accident from last night. His wife tells him the car is totaled and his phone is gone. Chang-ho asks his wife to call his phone. The phone starts ringing in the car as a man in black is searching it. He takes his iPhone and delivers Chang-ho's car to the scrapyard. A few days later, Chang-ho is recovering. As the family is getting ready to leave the hospital, detectives arrive with an arrest warrant. They suspect Chang-ho had drugs in his system while driving and are taking him into custody. Miho sees the police leading her husband away and immediately chases after them. After being with him for so many years, she knows him inside and out. She's certain he's being framed. She looks him in the eye and says, "In times like these, you have to stay calm and think clearly. Don't trust anyone. Trust only us." Inside the prison, Chang-ho calmly thinks things through. He remembers Ji-hoon's earlier threats and starts to understand what's going on. So he stands up, grabs the bars, and shouts that he wants to see Mayor Choi. He seems to have forgotten his wife's words when being arrested. Finally, in a secluded place, Chang-ho meets with Mayor Choi. Agitated, Chang-ho blurts out his suspicions, saying Ji-hoon wants to destroy the evidence and is framing him. "But Mayor, all you need is that USB. It was in my car, but the car was taken to the scrapyard right after the accident. Ji-hoon must have arranged it. How would he know there was a USB in your car? Did you meet with Ji-hoon? I am sorry. You must stay silent and trust that after the investigation is done, I will assist you. You want my assistance? Instead, why do not just ask Ji-hoon?" Detectives are tearing apart Chang-ho's office and uncover tons of money and gold. They even use a saw to cut open the ceiling, and money rains down. And as a result, Chang-ho is thrown into jail. As soon as he arrives, he's given special treatment. The 3 tycoons from before have taken him down to the basement. After a brutal beating, they hang him from the ceiling. His face is covered in blood and tears. He begs for his life, but they are unforgiving and even order their men to kick the chair out from under him. As Chang-ho struggles, he stops breathing and hangs motionless. Is he dead? The warden, watching the security camera, gets a call from Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon tells the warden he has to bring Chang-ho back to life. He's the one who stole trillions from us, so that dog needs to pay with his life, the jerk. Seeing this, the warden rushes medical staff to save Chang-ho and then tells the 3 tycoons who he really is. Surprised, they run back to their room and order a doctor to save his life at all costs. Under the doctor's genuine care, Chang-ho's heart starts beating again. Miho, not allowed to visit, is outside when she sees the news that her husband is the infamous money-digging rat. Turns out, this guy's been famous all over the country. He was the top dog in the underworld, but no one has ever seen his face. He's been stealing money from the tycoons for a long time, mysteriously only showing his head and not the tail, so they gave him the nickname Big Mouse. He also stole trillions of cash from a tycoon who is wanted. The police are now searching his house for evidence. Reporters swarm like bees on honey. Chang-ho's father-in-law has doubts. Is his good-for-nothing son-in-law really Big Mouse? But his wife still trusts him completely. Through the reporters, she sends him a message. Honey, I came to visit you today, but they didn't let me in. Before you prove your innocence, we will fight to the end. Don't forget that we are still husband and wife. Seeing his wife say those things on TV, he cries tears of frustration and shame and buries himself under the covers. Everyone is shocked to hear that Big Mouse has been arrested. The police start a sudden investigation with Chang-ho, asking where he hid the tycoon's trillions of won. But Chang-ho says that he isn't Big Mouse at all. The police even used a lie detector on him. Are you Big Mouse? I change, the happy police officer asks a second question. Answer me, are you Big Mouse? I am not Big Mouse. Don't get worked up. If the line goes from straight to curved, you're the culprit. The news of Big Mouse's arrest sends shockwaves. Ji-hoon goes to the prison and tells the 3 tycoons to ensure Chang-ho's safety until he gets all his money back. The tycoons, misinformed, still think the USB is in Chang-ho's hands, so they want to pressure him to hand it over. If that USB gets to court, they are done for. The warden watches the camera, finding the situation hilarious. One side wants to kill him to survive, the other doesn't want him killed until they get their money back. Mayor Choi is overjoyed when he learns of Chang-ho's arrest. It wasn't easy for him to get where he is, always being bullied by those money-grubbing tycoons. He's been patient, but now they're testing the law right in front of his mayoral office, and they are going to drag him down with them. With Big Mouse exposed, their attention will be on him, not the mayor. Still not convinced that Chang-ho is Big Mouse, Choi wants to find out if he's a hawk or a sparrow. The warden prepares a feast for Chang-ho, playfully asking if he's really Big Mouse. Chang-ho denies it. The warden's smile fades. Lock this guy up for 5 days in solitary. Confined. Chang-ho thinks about his wife. He remembers when they first broke up because he got bad grades. She was always there, secretly helping him until he got into law school and became a lawyer. He thought he'd have a carefree life, but he ended up in prison, being labeled a con artist. At this moment, his attitude starts to change. If everyone recognizes him as Big Mouse, he'll become Big Mouse. From the moment he makes that decision, he fears nothing. During mealtime, he brings his food tray to the prison boss and dumps it on his head. Everyone gasps, expecting the boss to kill him. Chang-ho then repeatedly slams the food tray into the boss's head, not stopping until the boss's head is split open. The boss stops his men and snaps a chopstick, but Chang-ho punches him, knocking the boss unconscious. Everyone is shocked. Even Chang-ho can't believe his own strength. He never knew he was this strong. It must be because of the Big Mouse title. Then he goes to the bathroom and taunts the infamous serial killer, mocking and humiliating him. The serial killer pulls out a hidden knife. But Chang-ho, seemingly unleashing his true nature, grabs the killer's hand, puts the knife to his own throat, and tells him to kill him. Seeing the serial killer hesitate, Chang-ho explodes, beating and cursing him. I shouldn't have mentioned your mom, I'm sorry. At that moment, Big Mouse is a confirmed legend in the prison. Finally, he arrives at the cafeteria, followed by a crew of followers. Even when he's getting food, if he thinks he's getting too little, he just stares, and the guy piles on more food. Everyone is now scared of him because Big Mouse has a reputation, plus he's clearly insane. But Chang-ho finds their fear incredibly satisfying. With all the prisoners under his thumb, Chang-ho isn't satisfied yet. He remembers what the warden did to him and gets an idea. He looks at the camera and plans an escape that night. The warden sees someone trying to escape and frantically sounds the alarm. All the guards surround him, but they don't dare do anything. Even though a sniper is aiming at him, Chang-ho taunts him until he shoots. The new prison boss, with an innocent face, leads a horde of new followers towards the guards. The warden sees the followers carrying strange buckets, proudly marching forward. Look at this! Inside these buckets is stinky shit! What are you doing? We're hungry, please give us food. Leaving your posts and demanding things? Chang-ho hears the warden's warning and doesn't even flinch. Instead, he takes a bucket full of feces and dumps it on the warden. Everyone is shocked and surrounds Chang-ho, but he doesn't stop. He keeps dumping it on the warden. Come here. Anyone who dares to cross this line, I'll dump it in your mouth. Come here, we want food. Bring us food. The guards have messed with the wrong inmate. Turns out, before Chang-ho truly escaped, he heard the sniper cock his gun. But the warden remembers Ji-hoon's words. Chang-ho is Big Mouse, and I need to get that money back. I gotta keep the dog alive, damn it. So the warden doesn't dare lay a hand on Big Mouse. He radios his men to stand down. But the warden also can't let Chang-ho's taunts go unpunished, so he assigns him to the lowest level of the prison. These inmates are responsible for dealing with all the prison's waste, and they barely get any food. Even though no one lets him work, he wants to do this disgusting job to finally calm down and figure out who turned him into Big Mouse. Just as he's starting to think, Chang-ho hears the meal call and immediately abandons his thoughts, being the first to the food line. Becoming a food server doesn't make him happy though. What he's serving isn't fit for pigs or dogs. So he angrily flips the food tray and, using the Big Mouth's name, shouts, "I will help us eat our fill, so bring the shit buckets and follow me." So everyone follows Chang-ho, carrying buckets filled to the brim with feces, and dumps them on the warden. The warden hears the news and rushes to talk to him. Chang-ho slowly walks up to him and says, "Just a good meal is enough?" He even uses the Big Mouth's name to threaten the warden. Now that everyone is watching, if the warden backs down, the Big Mouth's name will be humiliated. So everyone watches to see who will give in. The warden turns around and says, "Feed them. Disperse and eat, the boss helped us." One prisoner is eating lunch, and even the guards have to be careful around him, because this Big Mouth is a little crazy and will dump shit on you at the slightest provocation. But one stubborn cop still interrupts his lunch, because his wife and lawyer are here to visit. So he rushes to the interrogation room. Seeing his wife after so long, Miho smells the stench on him and cries with pity. She doesn't judge him but embraces him. The couple hugs, and his wife says she will find evidence to clear his name. But Chang-ho is worried about his wife, so he wipes away her tears and says something false. Again, the two hug and cry. Perhaps this is his greatest motivation, and the reason why Chang-ho continues his fight. Because of leaving his post on duty without approval, he has been put in a room, but this time he sees the new ideas and doesn't care anymore about the things that were put in front of him. So this makes him stay here for his dreams. He is the man who is going to be the best. So with this in mind, he makes his dreams take off. After 3 days of confinement, he's released. He has a new look, full of resolve, but he's just wearing a different mask. Starting from now, I am Big Mouse. If someone framed him as Big Mouse, then someone knows who the real Big Mouse is. So he will use this name to carry out his next plan. The stuff that has happened allowed him to have a crew for himself, and these bad things are to make a dream. Now that is what the other side is going to do to create an idea with his friends. He has 50 men who believe in him. So the news that Big Mouse will help people achieve their dreams quickly spreads throughout the prison. Chang-ho helps everyone so that there are more who follow him because, against his mysterious enemy, he needs to prepare for a lot of attacks. After a few days, the minions tell Chang-ho that only 3 people have signed up. No one thinks Chang-ho can help them, and many people are watching him. Chang-ho decides to fulfill the wishes of these 3 people first. Only then will others trust him. So he tells his minions to tell the 3 to meet at the prison church. In the church, Chang-ho opens the door. He sees that the first person registered is the department head from his unit, but he is the one who doesn't believe Big Mouth now seems the first to be in it. "If I believe you, can you really help me achieve my wish?" Chang-ho, trying to keep his composure, asked, "What is your wish?" The story poured out. It turns out that the guy had a daughter who vanished without a trace. He'd reported her missing a year ago. The police had basically given up, saying they had no leads. He was begging Chang-ho to find his daughter. Next up, number 2 on the list. It was the guy Chang-ho had personally put away. The young man who had confessed to killing 5 people. But there wasn't an ounce of malice in his eyes. Instead, he was shy, almost stammering, as he choked out his desperate plea. Can you save my mother?" Apparently his mother had leukemia. She had a bone marrow transplant. But now the cancer was back, and she needed another one. The surgery was costly. He couldn't possibly afford it. That's why he turned to Chang-ho. He was practically begging for help. He wanted Chang-ho to save his mother's life. The young man sobbed, "Someone like me, I'm worthless. I don't deserve to live, but please, please save my mother." Chang-ho, his mind racing, simply said, "Give me the name of the hospital and her room number." The scene shifts to the hospital. A nurse, Miho, rushed into a patient's room. The patient was foaming at the mouth. She quickly grabbed an oxygen mask and hit the emergency button. Before the doctors even arrived, she was already working on the patient, trying to revive him. After what seemed like an eternity, she finally got a heartbeat back. She'd saved his life, but when she looked up, she was met with a wall of cold stares. A group of doctors had gathered, watching her with detached expressions. They slowly entered the room. Instead of praising her quick thinking, they scolded her for administering medication without a doctor's order. "Explain yourself to the family and apologize," one of the doctors snapped, "and tell the senior nurses to train the new hires better so this doesn't happen again." After the doctors left, the head nurse spoke to Miho. She revealed a shocking secret. The patient's family had signed a "Do Not Resuscitate" (DNR) order. They had agreed to forego treatment. But what was even more bizarre was that everyone on the entire 7th floor had signed similar agreements, refusing medical care. The head nurse, with a chilling detachment, simply walked away. Miho, however, was deeply disturbed. The family refusing treatment was one thing, but everyone on the 7th floor, and the doctors just standing by letting patients die, something was definitely wrong. Overwhelmed and unable to shake the feeling that something sinister was going on, Miho left the hospital. Just as she stepped outside, a frantic woman stopped her. "Please," she begged, her voice trembling, "please save my husband. I don't trust anyone else in that hospital. They won't let me transfer him, but they aren't giving him any treatment either." But the woman didn't even finish speaking before someone else arrived, cutting her off. She scurried away. It hit Miho, then she recognized the woman. It was a family member of the patient she had just been attending to. She remembered overhearing an insurance agent talking to the woman earlier. The agent had been saying that if she agreed to sign a waiver, a do not resuscitate order, she would receive a significantly larger payout. She also didn't have any more money to continue treatment. In the end, the woman reluctantly signed the waiver, putting her signature on her loved one's fate. Deeply troubled by what she'd seen at the hospital, Miho told her father and her lawyer about the bizarre events. She recalled something Chang-ho had told her. A professor at the hospital had been silenced, murdered, after publishing a controversial paper. Miho started to suspect that the professor's research held the key to everything, that finding his paper would reveal why Chang-ho had been framed. Meanwhile, inside the prison, Chang-ho, now operating under the alias Big Mouse, was spreading the word that he would help people fulfill their wishes. This, of course, did not sit well with the three powerful tycoons who ruled the prison. They were furious and plotting their revenge. Suddenly, a group of inmates, looking menacing and determined, stormed toward Chang-ho. The prison guards locked the main gate and quickly disappeared, leaving Chang-ho to fend for himself. A brutal fight erupted, but then something completely unexpected happened. The inmate who was serving time for murder, the very same one who had come to Chang-ho seeking help for his mother, closed his eyes and walked straight toward Chang-ho. Chang-ho was stunned. He couldn't believe this guy was turning on him after all the pleading, the pathetic, desperate pleas. Was he really going to kill him? Just as the murderer lunged, another inmate threw himself in front of Chang-ho, taking the blow. It was the department head from Chang-ho's old firm, the man who had asked him to find his missing daughter. He had come to Chang-ho seeking help in completing his wish. Chang-ho watched in horror as the knife plunged into the man's abdomen. The murderer tried to twist the knife, aiming for a killing blow. Chang-ho, fueled by rage and adrenaline, kicked the murderer away. He stared down at the wounded man, who had just saved his life. A look of pure fury flashed across Chang-ho's face. Back at the hospital, Miho had just administered a dose of medication to a patient. But in the next instant, the patient went into violent convulsions. Luckily, the head nurse was there and managed to stabilize the patient. They accused Miho of giving the patient an overdose. But Miho was certain she had given the correct dosage, exactly 2 ng. She checked the nurse's notes to prove it, but to her shock, the notes showed the dose administered was only 1 ng. The head nurse, seizing the opportunity, pressed her advantage. Miho felt utterly betrayed and humiliated. Staying calm, she grabbed her phone and pulled up a photo she had taken before treating the patient. The photo clearly showed the medication vial labeled with 2 ng. Just then, an announcement boomed over the hospital's loudspeakers, summoning everyone to the conference room. The staff quickly dispersed, leaving Miho alone. As Miho walked into the conference room, she overheard her colleagues gossiping about her. They were saying that her husband was a convicted criminal, a disgrace, and that it was an insult to have to work alongside her. But at the conference, standing before the jeering comments and the accusations of her colleagues, Miho found an unexpected surge of courage. When the hospital director asked if anyone had any questions, she rose from her seat. Miho chose to confront everyone head-on, in the most direct way possible. Standing before the entire assembly, she announced, "I have Professor Zhou's unpublished manuscript." The air in the conference room instantly turned ice cold. Everyone knew that Professor Zhou had paid the ultimate price, his life, for publishing his controversial paper. But Miho, even knowing the danger, was willing to put herself at risk to uncover the truth, to lure the snake out of its hiding place. As she stepped off the bus later that day, a shadowy figure caught her attention. As Miho walked home, she finally felt the chilling sensation of being followed. She immediately stopped, her heart pounding in her chest. Taking advantage of a moment when her pursuer was distracted, she darted into a narrow alleyway, seeking refuge in the shadows. Miho, after being scolded by her father, calmed down a little, but then her phone rang. It was Mayor Choi. He wanted the manuscript. Without hesitating, she gave him a location to meet. Miho was playing a dangerous game, gambling with her life to find evidence of the truth. Meanwhile, back in prison, Chang-ho was locked in a brutal brawl with the other inmates. The warden, watching the chaos unfold, waited until several men were down and unable to get up before finally ordering the guards to intervene and stop the fight. The department head, the man who had jumped in front of Chang-ho, was in critical condition and was rushed to the hospital. Chang-ho knew this was all part of the warden's scheme. He was furious. He stood up, his face contorted with rage, and lunged toward the warden. "You chose the wrong side!" he roared. "You should have been on my side, not theirs!" As a result, the warden had Chang-ho and the other inmates involved in the fight thrown back into their cells. Later, the warden visited the hospital to check on the wounded department head. The man, barely clinging to life, weakly beckoned the warden closer, gesturing with a single trembling finger. Back in his cell, Chang-ho slammed his fist on the table, frustration boiling over. He looked down at his injured hand, clenching it into a fist. Then, one by one, the inmates who had been fighting alongside Chang-ho began convulsing, foaming at the mouth. They were being poisoned. They were dying. He frantically looked around, searching for any sign of Big Mouse. "It's Big Mouse," he shouted. "He must be among us. He's close." It turned out that the men who had been fighting were all placed in solitary confinement after the brawl. But then, one of them died in solitary confinement. Rumors began to spread that Big Mouse was taking his revenge. After all, there was nothing in the bare cell that they could use to commit suicide with. Where did the rope for the suicide come from? As the inmates thought of this, fear gripped the men in solitary confinement. They began banging their heads against the walls, drawing blood as they begged the guards to release them. Under the direction of a prison psychologist, the terrified inmates were released from solitary confinement, but their freedom was short-lived. Moments after being released, they happily made their way to the cafeteria. Just as they were about to eat their meal, they collapsed, one after another, dead right there on the spot. Those men were the same ones who had been fighting with Big Mouse. Only the death row inmate was still alive, and this only served to amplify the fear. Some whispered that Big Mouse was a strange sorcerer, a kind of dark magician who could control the souls of others, forcing his enemies to take their own lives. The entire prison was now consumed by terror, haunted by the name Chang-ho. Inmates began desperately searching for Chang-ho's alleged man, hoping he could somehow grant their wishes and protect them from Big Mouse. Meanwhile, the guards, terrified that Chang-ho would continue his killing spree, began monitoring him more closely than ever. They too were falling prey to the rumors, their minds clouded by fear and superstition. Upon hearing the news about Chang-ho, Ji-hoon came to the prison and demanded that Chang-ho return the 100 billion won he allegedly stole. But Chang-ho knew that his only chance of survival was to continue playing the role of Big Mouse. He told Ji-hoon that the 100 billion won was his insurance, his guarantee of survival. If he gave it up, he was certain he would be targeted and silenced. But Ji-hoon refused to believe that the young man before him was the real Big Mouse. He issued a challenge. Chang-ho had to prove he was Big Mouse by naming the clients he had worked with. Only then would Ji-hoon believe him. Finally, he gave Chang-ho a week to think about it. If he couldn't reveal the names of his clients, he would be exposed as an imposter. At that point, he would have no chance of survival. On the way back to his cell, Chang-ho looked up at the security camera and suddenly had an idea. He punched the guard, knocking him unconscious. He grabbed the guard's phone and desperately called for help. The person he called? Mayor Choi. He quickly explained the situation, begging the mayor to obtain the names of Big Mouth's clients within a week. If I can't give him 5 names, he'll kill me. Who told you this? Asked Mayor Choi. Ji-hoon, Chang-ho replied. At the same time, the warden was investigating the deaths of the inmates. From the beginning, he had refused to believe that Chang-ho was Big Mouse, and he certainly didn't believe in magic. After reviewing the security camera footage multiple times, they finally discovered the truth. The inmates had poisoned themselves. The warden gathered his men and headed to Chang-ho's cell. He ordered all the inmates to stand outside the door. Then, he instructed the guards to thoroughly search their cells, looking for any traces of poison. But after a thorough search, they found nothing. However, the warden noticed inmates from other cells craning their necks, trying to see what was happening. The warden ordered them back to their cells, but no one obeyed. Seeing Chang-ho, he simply glanced at him. But the weight of that look was heavier than any command. He found Chang-ho more irritating than ever. Finally, he approached Chang-ho. You have only 4 days left, he said. Just say the names and I'll believe you're Big Mouse. If you can't, you'll rot in this hellhole. Miho, having just finished work, was riding the subway home when she noticed a mysterious man staring at her. The girl cautiously exited the subway. She took out her phone and pretended to use it as a mirror, secretly snapping a photo of the man. Then, she sent the picture to her father and hid in the women's restroom, waiting for him to pick her up. Her father arrived at the restroom with her lawyer. Seeing a man in black standing outside, he pulled out an electric baton, ready to fight to the death. Miho rushed out of the restroom, only to discover that the man was Mayor Choi's secretary. Later, at Mayor Choi's office, Miho confronted him. Furious. You're a mayor. Why are you having me followed? The mayor insisted that she was in grave danger. Because she had claimed to possess Professor Joe's manuscript, he feared for her safety and had sent someone to protect her. Seeing that Miho didn't trust his good intentions, Mayor Choi pulled out a list and asked her to take it to Chang-ho during her prison visit the next day. Then, he said, she would know if he was trustworthy. The next day, Miho and her lawyer visited Chang-ho. The two embraced tightly, while the lawyer sighed. After Chang-ho dismissed his friend, the lawyer, Miho pulled out the list that Mayor Choi had given her. It contained the names of 5 people. Chang-ho's eyes widened. Having the list meant he was Big Mouse. But the 3 prison tycoons were becoming increasingly restless. With only 3 days left for Chang-ho to present the list to Ji-hoon and prove that he was the real Big Mouse, they grew desperate. Convinced that Chang-ho couldn't produce the list, they devised a plan to create chaos in the prison. They would spread the news throughout the prison and stir up rumors, focusing everyone's attention on one thing: whether or not Chang-ho could prove he was Big Mouse in 3 days. The 3 tycoons bribed the guards with 300 million won in transit cards, allowing everyone to place bets freely. But, unexpectedly, the betting lines for Chang-ho started winning, forming a never-ending queue. Chang-ho's loyal follower was tirelessly registering bets for everyone. The 3 tycoons, without a word, ordered a guard to beat Chang-ho's follower and drag him before Chang-ho. "Boss, I'm sorry," the follower whimpered. "I profited off your name." After hearing the full story, Chang-ho didn't blame his follower. He helped him up and told the three tycoons that he accepted their bet, because everyone who bet on him would win big. The reason Chang-ho agreed was that he had the list of clients. To him, this was an easy victory. He even used the 300 million won to increase the bet and invited the warden to be the bookmaker for this betting game. Everyone eagerly awaited the results of the betting game. But during the exhibition 3 days later, Mayor Choi encountered Ji-hoon there. Ji-hoon, sounding confident, said to Mayor Choi, "I'm going to see Park Chang-ho. Are you coming? He needs to say the 5 names. I'm concerned he may mispronounce some of them." Then he delivers the shocking reveal. "The list you gave him is fake. Those names were just names I picked at random." He confidently patted Mayor Choi on the shoulder and left the exhibition. After hearing this, Mayor Choi frantically called the warden, but the warden coldly hung up the phone. The warden then turned to look at the 3 tycoons, who were lying in their cells. Meanwhile, Chang-ho, still completely unaware of the deception, was eagerly awaiting the time to reveal the 5 names. A lawyer who consistently lost his cases had suddenly become a leader in prison. Not only did the warden fear him, but he also had a group of loyal followers. In this moment, he confidently held the list of clients, walking heroically to prove to everyone that he was the big mouse they'd all been waiting for. Little did he know that the list he held in his hand contained names that Ji-hoon had simply made up. Mayor Choi, in a panic, rushed to the prison. Just as he was about to speak with Chang-ho, the warden stopped him. Then, Chang-ho approached the mayor and rejected his plea. "I'm sorry, please understand my position." Ji-hoon let out a confident smile, looking at Chang-ho. He was certain that Chang-ho would write down the fake list, proving that he was a fraud. He would not only expose him but also inflict pain that would be worse than death. Chang-ho, still completely unaware of the truth, remained confident. He sat across from Ji-hoon. Suddenly, the room fell silent. Mayor Choi walked in, and Ji-hoon saw that as confirmation that the list Chang-ho had in his hand was the fake one he had written himself. The warden produced 2 glasses, along with paper and pens, and placed them in front of the 2 men. He announced the rules of the betting game. Each person would write down the names they knew, and he would reveal them simultaneously. The 2 men wrote the names on the paper and placed them inside the glasses. The warden opened the list written by Ji-hoon first and read it aloud in front of everyone. Then, wearing a confident smile, he slammed his hand on the table, eager to see the warden read Chang-ho's list. But time seemed to stand still, as everyone waited with bated breath. The warden stared at the paper for a long time, a pained expression on his face, before folding it up and handing it to Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon snatched the paper from him and opened it to reveal the list. To everyone's surprise, the 2 lists were identical. "What is going on here?" he shouted. "How can his list be exactly the same as mine? Listen to this name. Lucas Martin. He spelled it wrong. He missed a letter S." The prisoners, who were waiting for the results, erupted in cheers when they heard Chang-ho had won. Only Mayor Choi looked at Chang-ho with suspicion. The list he had Miho give him did not contain these names. How could Chang-ho have written the names of the real clients? Could Chang-ho actually be the big mouth they had all been talking about? Just then, the warden's phone rang. After hanging up, he looked at Chang-ho. "Chang-ho, the prosecutors want to see you." "Why so suddenly?" "Because Old Man Hong has been arrested. They want to question you immediately." As Chang-ho was being led into the interrogation room, the prosecutors said that they had a witness who could identify if he really is Big Mouse. Chang-ho just looked at him with a sharp gaze, and unexpectedly, the next second, the man started foaming at the mouth and died on the spot. "Hey, you bastard! Wake up for me!" Ji-hoon shouted. This scene infuriated Ji-hoon, who slammed his fist on the table. It further convinced Mayor Choi that Chang-ho was indeed Big Mouth. Chang-ho, meanwhile, shot Ji-hoon a look of crimson-eyed suspicion, wondering if he was trying to silence the witness and pin the blame on him. Watching the events unfold before him, Ji-hoon was livid, cursing under his breath. He had intended to use the witness to determine if Chang-ho was Big Mouth, but now the witness was dead in the police interrogation room. Finally, he thought of Chang-ho's wife. Perhaps she held Professor Joe's manuscript. If Chang-ho were Big Mouth, then the manuscript must be in the hands of his wife. That's just a lie. "I've already asked her," someone said. "What if it isn't a lie? She's the wife of Big Mouth, the most dangerous woman in the world." Second only to Park Chang-ho himself, Ji-hoon arranged to meet Chang-ho's wife, Miho, at a restaurant. Mayor Choi planted a listening device there to eavesdrop on their conversation. Ji-hoon used threatening language to pressure Miho into handing over Professor Joe's manuscript, but Miho stood her ground. She confidently turned to him and said, "I think you're the one in danger now. My husband is Big Mouth, isn't he?" Mayor Choi, having gleaned no useful information, took off his headset. He received a call from Miho, who thanked him profusely for giving her the list, which had convinced Ji-hoon that her husband was Big Mouth. Because of that Big Mouth title, Ji-hoon didn't dare do anything to her. Hearing this, Mayor Choi became even more confused. He didn't understand who had switched the lists, helping Chang-ho say the real client names and making everyone believe he was Big Mouth. Meanwhile, in the prison, everyone was ecstatic, lining up to redeem their winning tickets. The biggest winnings, of course, went to the 300 million won that the three tycoons had lost. After handing over their losses, they angrily left. Chang-ho, in turn, took the money from the suitcase and placed it in front of the warden to buy the same VIP treatment that the three tycoons had enjoyed. He also bought a feast for all the inmates inside. Faced with the reality of the situation, the warden immediately submitted. Chang-ho was carried into the dining hall like a hero, everyone cheering his name. The three tycoons, meanwhile, sat awkwardly on the sofa, becoming even more uneasy as they thought about Chang-ho being Big Mouth. Those who had offended Chang-ho not only died in prison, but there were prisoners poisoned and dying at the dining hall, as they, the tycoon, worriedly called to ask for help from the man who used to be the leader in the prison. Chang-ho brought a few loyal followers before the three tycoons and, with a steely tone, ordered them. In a few days at the trial, Hae-young must truthfully confess that he killed Professor Jo. What? He wasn't killed by us. Why would we dig our own grave like that? One of the tycoons retorted. If you don't, you will all die in this prison. With no explanation, Chang-ho replied sternly. After issuing that threat, Chang-ho turned and walked away. To amplify their fear of his big mouth persona, Chang-ho began laying out his plan. I must take action, follow in the footsteps of Big Mouth, and do things my way. At that moment, he sat majestically at the center of the prison yard, like a king surveying his domain. Suddenly, a banner appeared overhead, written in red letters. If you want your heart's desires fulfilled, hurry to the Bible chapel. Then, Chang-ho walked into the chapel to pray. The Lord has said, I will deliver your enemies into your hands to do with them as you please. That day is today. In the bathroom, a man was minding his business when a bucket of ice-cold water fell on his head, soaking him. Just as he looked up, a live electrical wire fell in front of his face, threatening to kill him. The three tycoons looked at Chang-ho as if they were seeing the gates of hell. Filled with terror, they tried to flee. The two men beside Chang-ho, however, looked at him with admiration. At this moment, everyone saw him as Big Mouth. But whether he truly was Big Mouth, only Chang-ho knew the answer to that question. Terrified, the three tycoons sought help from Jae-hoon, hoping they could be transferred to another prison. Otherwise, based on Big Mouth's vengeful nature, they would surely die here. But Ji-hoon told them that even if they were transferred to another prison, they would still be in danger, as Big Mouth's organization had infiltrated the entire country. At least here, they had the protection of Jae-hoon and the warden. After saying this, Jae-hoon, escorted by a guard, left the prison. But at that moment, he noticed Chang-ho sitting regally on the steps. Chang-ho asked Ji-hoon why he had broken the rules by threatening his wife. Didn't he know that this was a taboo? Hearing the word rules, Ji-hoon turned back and told Chang-ho that perhaps inside the prison, he was Big Mouth, able to do whatever he wanted. But outside, Ji-hoon's word was the rule. Just then, Ji-hoon received a phone call from his wife, who furiously asked him why he had sent her a bouquet traditionally reserved for the dead. Chang-ho overheard and cut in, saying, She's 34 years old, right? If you ever bother my Miho again, I'll give you the scariest gift in the world. After threatening Ji-hoon, Chang-ho swaggered away, right in front of the warden. Ji-hoon, seething with anger, glared at Chang-ho's back, barely containing his rage. He wanted to end Chang-ho's life. But the warden, as if by accident or design, reminded him that he still wanted to get the 1 billion won that Big Mouth had stashed away. Thinking of his money, Ji-hoon had no choice but to swallow his anger and leave the prison in a fit of fury. The warden, meanwhile, watched his back with a sinister smile. At the same time, Chang-ho took the obese tycoon down to the basement, because Chang-ho was nearly killed there by the three tycoons. Now, it was his turn. In that exact spot, the roles were reversed. Today, it was Chang-ho who was Big Mouth in the dark room. He looked at the man kneeling on the ground and threatened him again. Confess to the court that you killed Professor Jo. Seeing that the obese tycoon remained silent, Chang-ho didn't waste any more words. He simply ordered his followers to hang the man up. Then he kicked away the chair beneath him, and the obese tycoon stopped struggling. Even the loyal follower couldn't believe that Big Mouth, the person he worshipped, would do this. Finally, he turned away, unable to bear the scene before him. You said you'd confess, the follower said. The obese tycoon weakly nodded his head. Who exactly is Big Mouth? There is a lot of speculation online, and even people analyzing each character in the drama. Therefore, we are bold enough to make a prediction. Perhaps Big Mouth isn't a person at all but a vast criminal organization. Let me explain this to you all. First, whether in or out of prison, there are clear traces of Big Mouth. This is not something one person can accomplish. Someone who fought with Chang-ho either died in prison or was poisoned in the dining hall. At that time, Chang-ho knew that these were Big Mouth's methods. It's Big Mouth. He is likely among these people. He is very close to me. Looking at Chang-ho's expression, it's clear that he couldn't have had the opportunity to harm those inmates in front of everyone. This strongly suggests that Chang-ho isn't Big Mouth. Next, consider Chang-ho's follower. Not only does he have a cute little mouse tattoo, but his name is also Jerry, just like the cartoon mouse. He was imprisoned for theft, but the prison is described as a place for dangerous criminals. An ordinary thief being held there seems unrealistic. He also told Chang-ho the reason for his tattoo: "I took the nickname Jerry because I admire you. I will faithfully serve you from now on." His words, coupled with the tattoo, lead me to believe that he might be a foot soldier in the Big Mouth organization. In another scene, when Chang-ho was cleaning in the prison, he was reflecting on the person who made him into Big Mouth. The camera angle focused on a sewer pipe, then panned up to a mirror, and the meal bell rang. The screen shows a face. The sewer water suggests someone is hidden. All of this symbolizes the second Big Mouth character. It's the warden who often accompanies the chief. Another hint is that he could get the inmates at solitary confinement to commit suicide, as well as poison the food at the dining hall. Remember when Chang-ho was still a lawyer? The warden was the one who took Chang-ho to meet the three tycoons. He also showed up alongside them once again, and if the warden was a simple character, then why give him so much screen time? Miho's words to Chang-ho sounded like dialogue meant to be substituted. If there is one Big Mouth in the family, then the goal will be quite small, and it can only be Chang-ho, Miho, and Chang-ho's father-in-law. And since the police found Big Mouth's money in the ceiling of Big Mouth's office, we can eliminate Miho from ever being in contact with Chang-ho's office. The one person to look at is Chang-ho's father-in-law, who is Big Mouth. Because the client list has two copies, with one from the mayor and the other is the one given to Chang-ho by Miho, then obviously one list was switched. The person who can switch the list has to be Chang-ho's father-in-law, who passed it on to Chang-ho's wife. Some people believe that Chang-ho is Big Mouth, but the reality is that Big Mouth is Chang-ho's father-in-law Jerry and the warden. Chang-ho, although he was not Big Mouth before, truly became Big Mouth after receiving the list. The motivation could be that he took a high-profile case, so he put on the Big Mouth persona to protect his life. It's also possible that Chang-ho's father-in-law wanted Chang-ho to be his successor as Big Mouth. The head nurse was secretly drawing blood from a patient and then leaving the room. Miho, who was working the night shift, saw this and felt that something was wrong, so she quietly followed the head nurse. She followed her to the hospital's pharmacy, but when she got there, she couldn't find the head nurse. Suddenly, she heard a noise coming from outside. She quickly hid in a corner. "Come out! Nurse Miho!" After Miho was discovered, she grabbed a tray of face masks nearby and told the hospital director that she had just come to get face masks. However, the director brought the security camera staff to expose her lie. "I've seen the camera footage, and I haven't seen anyone else come in here except you. If you ever do anything like this again, I will personally fire you from the hospital." After Miho left, the director instructed the security camera staff that no matter what, they were not to be curious about this room and were not to enter it. Finally, the director looked up at the room behind the poster. The next day, Mayor Choi visited Miho again and told her his story. When he was very young, his father ran a printing factory. One day, his father ran afoul of the law. His father constantly appealed, wanting to prove his innocence, but the result was a devastating failure. Eventually, his father got sick and died, so he decided to go into law, wanting to help people like his father. However, as soon as he became a prosecutor, he learned the truth. It turned out that every time it rained, his father secretly dumped wastewater into the river for 3 years. At that time, he thought he was unlucky. Now, it's you who is the most unhappy person in the world. Chang-ho, he really is Big Mouth. The list I gave him and the list Chang-ho wrote are completely different. Therefore, he didn't want Miho to fall into darkness like he had when he was deceived by his own father. After hearing this story, Miho couldn't believe her ears. She left and boarded a bus to go home. Miho received a call from her father, who told her that Chang-ho had repaid his 1 billion won debt in prison. This news made Miho even more conflicted. She painfully recalled the things she had experienced with Chang-ho. No matter what, she couldn't accept that her husband was Big Mouth. A group of beautiful nurses entered the prison, which made the inmates inside very excited. They shouted loudly and constantly banged on the iron bars. Among the nurses was Big Mouth's wife. The warden, seeing Miho, remembered the wife who had visited Big Mouth before. The warden went to Chang-ho's cell and told him that his wife had come to the prison as a volunteer. Hearing that his wife was coming to the prison after so long, he couldn't help but smile happily. He asked the warden to open his cell. He wanted to take a clean shower and look his best for his loved one. His followers prepared his clothes for him, warning the other inmates, "Anyone who dares to cause trouble today will pay for it. I've already told everyone that our sister-in-law is coming to visit today." Oh, that's right, where are the 3 tycoons now? Chang-ho wanted to have a pleasant meeting with his wife, so he unintentionally put the 3 tycoons in solitary confinement. "You 3 just stay put today. My sister-in-law is coming today. If you meet, it won't be comfortable for anyone at this time." The warden also told Chang-ho that the wives of the 3 tycoons were there. So, Chang-ho opened the door to the solitary confinement and had Jerry tell them that if they behaved, they would be allowed to see their wives. Then, everyone gathered in the main hall. Miho was searching for Chang-ho, unaware that she was about to receive an unexpected gift. Jerry stepped forward and shouted, "Sister-in-law!" This scene left Miho dazed. She looked at the warden in confusion. Everyone began shouting Miho's name. And from that moment on, Miho became the sister-in-law of the entire prison. But this scene didn't make Miho very happy. Chang-ho then approached Miho and called her his sister-in-law. He bowed low and said he would take her to see Chang-ho, personally leading her to the room. The room that awaited her was the room where the 3 tycoons had been confined. Miho saw Chang-ho's back. He looked like an emperor, enjoying himself on the sofa. The table was even laid out with food and red wine. He turned and looked at her, but his clean and fresh appearance only made her angrier. It seems the rumors are not unfounded. Are you really Big Mouth? You even hid it from me? If it's not true, tell me. If it is true, tell me too. Just say something. Why won't you open your mouth? Why? But Chang-ho refused to explain because he knew that every move he made in this room was under the warden's control. But to reassure the woman he loved, he pulled Miho to the prison yard. After confirming that it was safe, he told Miho the truth. After he received the list, many strange things happened. That day, he intended to throw away the list, but someone put a black cloth over his head. When he woke up, the list was gone, and the person put a card into his hand. The card contained the names of 5 clients. He even received information that the witness would die at the police station, and he even knew that someone had sent 43 white chrysanthemums to Ji-hoon's wife. So that means the person who put him in this situation is the real Big Mouth. Then, this has nothing to do with Professor Joe's thesis. Big Mouth gave him the tarot card number 20, Judgment. He wants him to find the truth for Professor Joe, which is the judgment for them. This man meets his long-lost wife again. Unable to suppress his longing, he hugs her. Unexpectedly, she pushes him away with force. The man believes that his wife looks down on him because he is a prisoner. He not only beats her terribly, but also grabs her collar and asks, "Do you have fun playing outside?" Seeing that his wife did not answer, he lost even more control and squeezed his wife's neck. When his wife could no longer breathe, she desperately said her sister's name. At this time, the man calmed down and let go. Then, as if nothing had happened, he asked his wife if her sister was doing well. But the wife put on a speechless look. Then, the man put his arm around his wife's shoulder and said to her that he was about to be released on parole. Hearing this made her feel like the whole sky was collapsing. Then, she looked at her husband with fearful eyes. Over here, Miho also knew the truth. It turned out that Chang-ho was not Big Mouth at all. Moreover, Big Mouth was still exchanging information with Chang-ho. The place where the two exchanged information was the chapel. Big Mouth also gave Chang-ho a new task, to investigate the case of Professor Joe. Seeing Chang-ho being manipulated by Big Mouth made Miho very worried. So, she decided to stand side by side with Chang-ho. She would take care of finding Professor Joe's thesis, and Chang-ho would find out who the real Big Mouth was to prevent Chang-ho from being exploited and causing him harm. Finally, Miho resolved the misunderstanding in her heart and hugged Chang-ho tightly. The warden was unable to hear their conversation and looked at the screen helplessly. She didn't come to volunteer. Why did she come here to give out dog food? At this time, Miho and her colleagues were carrying things back when a colleague suddenly collapsed. When Miho sat down to ask, she saw a red mark on her neck. After learning that she had just met her husband and had turned into this state, Miho kept telling her to seek help from the support group on the way back. But she told Miho not to worry about things that didn't concern her. Finally, when she got off the bus and saw the soulless look in her colleague's eyes, she couldn't help but worry about her. That evening, Miho unexpectedly received a call from a former patient. This person was standing on the rooftop, looking at Miho. She said that she knew the whereabouts of Professor Joe's thesis, but she needed a lot of money before she would tell Miho. Moreover, as the wife of Big Mouth, she wouldn't care about the money. Hearing about the thesis, Miho agreed without hesitation and urgently asked the woman where the thesis was. The thesis is inside a cross necklace. The necklace is in the hands of a woman. A woman? Who is she? Hello, can you hear me? Miho was shocked by what she saw. Then, she ran to the director and saw the cross necklace. She told the director the contents of the call with the dead woman and asked to inspect the director's necklace. The director did not hesitate and handed it over to Miho for inspection. After a while, Miho didn't find any secrets in the necklace. But Miho didn't give up. She went home and talked to her father and lawyer about this. Then, she reviewed the director's interviews to see if the necklace was the same as it was now. But after careful inspection, she was very disappointed. But at this time, the camera focused on Miho's colleague, and Miho noticed that the wife who was abused by her husband was wearing a cross necklace. It seemed that Professor Joe's thesis had been found. It was in the hands of the wife. This woman was frantically pounding meat in the kitchen until she was breathless. She recalled what she had overheard today. This is a murder case. Before she died, she called me and said that Professor Joe's thesis was in the cross necklace. When she heard about the cross necklace, she took it off. She remembered being abused before, and then she took advantage of the rain to escape. On the road, she unexpectedly met Professor Joe. Seeing that her husband was getting close, she begged Professor Joe to save her. "Honey, where are you?" In the days that followed, Professor Joe took care of her attentively, which made her open her heart again. She leaned on Professor Joe's shoulder and watched the sunset by the sea. They became each other's lovers. This necklace was the only gift he gave her. She regarded this necklace as her treasure. But today, she knew that this necklace contained a secret that should not be told to anyone. This made her heartbroken, and she clutched the necklace tightly in her hand, thinking of the man she loved. Meanwhile, the three tycoons were happily waiting for someone to bail them out, exclaiming that they wouldn't have to endure Big Mouth's bullying anymore. At this time, the warden came and said good things to them, saying that their bail had gone smoothly. "We will see how you deal with Big Mouth outside. I am Big Mouth here, and Park Chang-ho is just a mouse." Hearing this, the three people burst out laughing. Then, the warden personally led the three tycoons out of the prison. However, on the way, they met Chang-ho's group who were righteously blocking their way. The prisoners began to gather around to see what would happen. But at this time, the three tycoons were no longer as afraid as before, and exaggeratedly told Chang-ho to quickly make way for them. Then, the situation changed when a third party joined. The people behind Chang-ho also began to change direction. The chief smiled evilly. The fat tycoon then told the director that because he had stood up to testify for Chang-ho, Ji-hoon did not bail him out. The warden ordered people to take him back to the prison. The prisoners were gloating and watching to see how the man known as Big Mouth would deal with this. Unexpectedly, after watching the group leave, Chang-ho smiled ironically, making his little brother Jerry think he was crazy. "You guys have fallen into the tiger's den, you stupid fools." This fat man used to call the shots in prison, but now he has been abandoned by his two accomplices. Furthermore, he was tied to a chair in the church by the leader in the prison just because he said he stood up to testify for Chang-ho, which led to his destruction. Then the follower prepared to whip. Suddenly, a group of prisoners ran over. It turned out that Chang-ho had brought his followers into the church. He went straight to the point, but the leader still wanted to take the fat man away. "You have to step over his body." Chang-ho looked at the fat man there and waved his hand for his followers to go up. The followers immediately went up and started fighting with the leader's group. Chang-ho calmly sat down and watched the chaotic scene before him. The warden, through the camera, only dared to stand up, clench his fists, and put them in his pockets, not daring to stop them. Now they knew why the warden didn't stop this group of people. Before, they were fighting fiercely, but now they are sitting down and sharing their thoughts. Those weak punches were just a way for Chang-ho and the leader to set up this fight. The purpose was to gain the fat man's trust, and from there, get information from him. The fat man, oblivious to the setup, was constantly thanking Chang-ho. Chang-ho then began to press him for information. "Was it because you knew about the thesis that Ji-hoon abandoned you, wanting to silence you?" Under Chang-ho's questioning, the fat man stood up. "I dare not say. Ji-hoon is nothing to be afraid of. There is someone even more terrifying behind him. You shouldn't investigate that thesis anymore. Anything besides the thesis, I'll tell you." The reason the leader was helping Chang-ho was that he would be released in 3 months. Chang-ho had promised him that he would leave within the next 3 months and help him escape this deadly circle, helping him spend the rest of his life in peace. So, Chang-ho took the card to the confessional and told the real Big Mouth his plan to leave the prison. Little did he know that this move was Chang-ho's attempt to catch the real Big Mouth. Big Mouth, enjoy it, because this is the trap for you. Just as Chang-ho inserted the card into the Bible, he suddenly heard footsteps from the opposite side. Unexpectedly, it was the department head. A patient in the hospital suddenly fell into a coma. Miho wanted to save him, but was stopped by the head nurse. Even the patient's family agreed with the head nurse's actions. When the heart rate monitor beeped, the doctor announced the patient's time of death. The family burst into tears. Confused by these actions, Miho went to the patient's funeral. Hearing the conversation of the patient's family, she felt that something was wrong, so she went to the morgue at night. She bravely took some blood from the patient and had it tested. After Miho successfully took the patient's blood, she ran into the director who was blocking her way. The director ordered the 2 nurses behind her to go up and snatch Miho's bag, but they didn't find anything unusual. They even searched her whole body, but still found nothing. Just as the atmosphere became awkward, Mayor Choi came to this place, and the director finally let Miho go. She had dinner with her husband at a restaurant, but while eating, the 2 of them were thinking about their own things. When you're with me, don't think about other things. At times like this, you're like a different person. At this moment, Miho returned to the morgue. After taking the blood she had hidden there, she quickly left. However, after entering the elevator, a strange thing happened. The elevator suddenly made a painful noise, and the lights began to flicker. Miho tried to call her father, but suddenly a man jumped down from above. She screamed for help, and the man in black grabbed her and squeezed her neck tightly. Just when she was desperate, the elevator door opened, and Mayor Choi was standing at the door. The man gave up on killing Miho and frantically ran away. Mayor Choi hurried to check on Miho. Miho felt around in her bag and found that the 2 tubes of blood were still there. These might hold the answer to Professor Joe's thesis. Back in prison, Chang-ho breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he quietly waited for the real Big Mouth, because the statue of the Virgin Mary was broken. It was Chang-ho who intentionally told Jerry to do it. So they ordered another statue from his friend with a secret camera, and his phone would be in his book. All he needed to do now was wait for Big Mouth to take the tarot card. Then he would know who the real Big Mouth was. When Chang-ho returned to the cathedral, the card had disappeared without a trace. So, he reviewed the camera footage and discovered a familiar face. That person had automatically become familiar with him and always did what he wanted without reason. This man was handing out drinks to everyone, but when he handed out drinks, he took out a bottle and gave it to Chang-ho. It turned out that Jerry had received news that he was being released, and he excitedly took out the drink as a farewell gift to everyone. Then, he sadly packed his things. Seeing Chang-ho finish the water he gave him, he nervously left the prison. It turned out that Ji-hoon had paid a large settlement to the victim to help him get out of prison. Moreover, he also agreed to Jerry's request. He would not kill Big Mouth because he needed to recover the 1 billion won from Big Mouth. Finally, Jerry agreed to Ji-hoon's request. At this time, after Chang-ho finished the water, he writhed in pain and lay on the ground. Jerry saw his sister-in-law entering the prison and turned away guiltily. Seeing an ambulance speeding away, Jerry began to worry about Chang-ho, so he told Miho that Chang-ho was in the ambulance. Then, the three of them got into the car and chased after the ambulance. However, Miho saw that the car was not going to the hospital, so she told her father to quickly chase after the car. Finally, under the skillful driving of Miho's father, they stopped the car. Then she hurriedly got into the car to check Chang-ho's condition. Using her position as a nurse, she requested that the police allow her to go to the hospital with Chang-ho. Finally, she successfully took her husband to the hospital where she worked. After seeing that Chang-ho was fine, she remembered Jerry and expressed her gratitude to him. At this time, a policeman came to Chang-ho's ward. He took Chang-ho's fingerprint and pressed it on a document. Then, he wiped away the traces and left the ward. Finally, he gave the document to Ji-hoon. Ji-hoon saw Chang-ho's fingerprint and was satisfied. The policeman left. Chang-ho then woke up after his coma. The first person he saw was his wife, and then he looked at his wife with loving eyes. Now, he just wanted to return to a normal life, watching TV together, talking, and occasionally flicking each other on the forehead. Seeing her poor husband, Miho sadly hugged him. Hearing the shouts of the warden outside, she reluctantly left. But Chang-ho clenched his fist. He vowed to drag Big Mouth out of the shadows because it was Big Mouth who had caused the situation he was in, not only becoming a criminal for no reason but also being separated from his wife. Then, on the way back to the prison, he began to think about his little brother Jerry, who had poisoned him for no reason. Just as he was thinking, the police car did not go back to the prison. Then, Chang-ho was held back by 2 police guards and injected with a needle. Finally, they took him to a mysterious mental hospital. After much waiting, the true identity of Big Mouth was finally revealed. In the cathedral, a person went to the confessional. He slowly took out the card from the Bible. This was the secret base that only Chang-ho and Big Mouth knew. At this time, Chang-ho lightly walked to the back of the man and grabbed his shoulder. But when he turned around, he was wearing a blank white mask. Unable to ask, a fight broke out, and Chang-ho asked him if he was Big Mouth. Finally, Chang-ho pushed him to the ground and tore off his mask. But behind the mask was himself, with a sinister smile. The camera switched, and Chang-ho woke up from a nightmare. He was locked in a white room for mental patients. Chang-ho tried to struggle free from the restraints when the head nurse came in and gave him an injection. Furthermore, she set out a table of food for him, but didn't let him eat it and didn't let him sleep, exhausting him. They did this to wear down his spirit. At this time, Ji-hoon and the prosecutor were in the room next door, preparing a new drug. It was a drug that would make you tell the truth or suffer pain. Then, Chang-ho, who was being tormented, had a blank expression on his face. Ji-hoon then entered, taking the special drug and injecting it into Chang-ho. Chang-ho immediately fell into pain. In his pain, he seemed to return to that dream. Suddenly, a rat came to his hospital bed, and it seemed to have found its leader. So, it prostrated itself before Chang-ho. Chang-ho also happily greeted it, but in the next second, he was surrounded by rats, scaring him. Seeing Chang-ho being tormented like this, Ji-hoon knew the time had come. So, he asked him where the 100 billion won was. But Chang-ho vaguely said he didn't know. Then he asked him if he was Big Mouth, but he still answered that he didn't know. Seeing that he hadn't gotten the answers he wanted, Ji-hoon injected Chang-ho with another dose. But this time he fainted. In his coma, Chang-ho recalled the beautiful time he spent with Miho. It was the power of love that pulled him back from the brink of death. When he was splashed with cold water to wake him up, he saw Ji-hoon preparing another dose. Chang-ho finally answered. Judang Mountain, symbol Atu. I am hiding the money there. After getting the answer, Ji-hoon was so happy that he went crazy and sent someone to dig up the money in the middle of the night. As a result, after a long time, they found a box. After opening the box, they found a gold bar inside. He had indeed been deceived by Chang-ho because the money was not there at all. After searching for the money, Ji-hoon, his face stained with dirt, interrogated Chang-ho. But Chang-ho was also surprised that he had just said a random place. It turned out that there was real gold there that made him Big Mouth. Chang-ho was now sure that Big Mouth was helping him. But when he gave the location, the room had the 3 of them, so they didn't care anymore. He believed that if he waited a little longer, Big Mouth would come looking for him. The man slowly reached out his hand, wanting to strangle the dying man on the bed. His deadly eyes seemed to be making a final decision. But at the last minute he withdrew his hand and sat down next to the old man, looking at the solution being infused into him. He then came up with a more practical way. It turned out that when Mayor Choi brought his wife to visit this man, the director checked his body. She couldn't help but reveal a worried expression. She wanted this old man to give the right to run the enterprise to her husband, but the old man was still very conscious. Mayor Choi was also waiting anxiously outside to be chosen. After his wife came out, he hurried inside, but seeing the old man sleeping soundly, Mayor Choi knew he was not the chosen one. That's why he took the action he just did. At this time, a man with the Big Mouth organization's tattoo on his finger flicked his lighter to the ground, lighting a fire. At the mental hospital where Chang-ho was staying, a fire was started. The head nurse called the police, but the other side said that they had already sent someone. She was surprised when someone reported the fire. Before she even hung up, 114 had arrived at the scene. The hospital was now in a state of chaos. Chang-ho took this opportunity to escape, but he was blocked by a hulking thug who even tortured Chang-ho. The thug smiled sweetly. Just as he was about to strike, someone came to the rescue. The man took off his hat and revealed himself to be Jerry, his little brother, who had been released from prison. Jerry helped Chang-ho escape from the hospital. But on the way, someone was constantly following them. Jerry used his special move, a 180-degree turn, and then accelerated away, cutting off the follower. Finally, Jerry took Chang-ho to a deserted place and stopped. Before he could ask what was going on, Jerry handed him a key and told him to run away from this place. After letting Chang-ho leave, Jerry drove the car out of the tunnel. He wanted to give Chang-ho time to escape, so he used himself as bait to lure the pursuers. Soon, he was overtaken by the pursuers. The men in black suddenly surrounded Jerry's car. Jerry stepped heavily on the accelerator and sped forward. At this time, Chang-ho put on a new set of clothes and drove away. He then saw a terrible accident and saw that the person was his little brother, Jerry. This scene caused Chang-ho great pain, and he stood rooted to the spot. However, seeing Ji-hoon, Chang-ho had to pull down his hat and hurriedly drive away. Soon, the police announced that he had escaped from prison and issued an arrest warrant. Mi-ho and her father-in-law, upon seeing this news, were stunned. They couldn't believe this news. In the prison, the leader, seeing this news, was even more convinced that Chang-ho was Big Mouth. The police held up Chang-ho's photo and investigated. When they looked at Chang-ho, he prepared to accelerate, but unexpectedly, he was let go. He also didn't even know the policeman, and he hurriedly left the police checkpoint. At this time, behind the policeman's ear was a tattoo of Big Mouth. After escaping, Chang-ho followed the phone to a safe room. After calming down, he remembered Jerry and dropped the bottle of water. Chang-ho thought he would not be like Jerry and be used. He would not die like that. He also thanked Jerry for proving that he was a bad person. At this time, Mi-ho, knowing that her husband was wanted, couldn't calm down. In the current situation, she had to quickly contact Chang-ho. Suddenly, her father comforted her, and she came up with a perfect idea. So, the next day, she began to take action. Mi-ho brought her father and lawyer, along with a group of reporters, to surround the prosecutor, who was preparing to go to work. She then questioned him, saying that her husband had not escaped from prison. This was a kidnapping case. Why, after her husband was kidnapped, was he framed for escaping from prison? Standing before Mi-ho, the prosecutor couldn't deny the facts, claiming that Chang-ho's actions constituted a prison escape. But Mi-ho didn't stop there. She brought her father and lawyer to the prosecutor's office to bother him, even stalking him while he went to the bathroom. Chang-ho at this time also knew what Mi-ho was doing for him. He seemed to feel that Mi-ho was trying to contact him and understood his wife's purpose in an instant. So, he went to an abandoned house near the prosecutor's office and looked at his wife. At this time, Mi-ho was attracted by an advertising screen. She saw a man using an insurance policy to propose to his daughter. This made her unconsciously think of the scene when Chang-ho proposed to her. She immediately understood and called the phone number on the screen. Finally, the two of them were able to contact each other. In the phone call, Mi-ho learned that Chang-ho was at the clock tower looking at her. This made her even sadder for him. They were clearly innocent, but now they could only meet each other in this way. Hearing Mi-ho's crying, Chang-ho said that from now on, it was his turn to hold the knife. On this side, the three tycoons were preparing to make their defense, but they saw news of their killing of Professor Jo all over the internet. This made them very worried, and they asked Ji-hoon for help. However, Ji-hoon told them not to worry, saying that he had handled everything properly. Soon came the day for the three tycoons to go to court. A group of reporters immediately mobbed the three men like celebrities. In response to the reporters' questions, they said to wait for the end of the trial to know the answer. After saying this, the three people quickly entered the courtroom. With the appearance of the judge, this plea of innocence began. However, they didn't know that outside there was also a live broadcast monitoring this trial. Even this trial attracted a large number of netizens, pushing the matter to the top of the hot search list. Then, the camera of the live stream turned to the warehouse. There was just the back of a man walking towards the sunlight. I will let everyone know the results of today's trial. This was a live broadcast predicting the verdict of the court. Chang-ho sat majestically in front of the camera to guess the result of the verdict in the case of the three tycoons killing Professor Jo. Then he introduced to the netizens that the scene of today's verdict, if Prosecutor Choi were a righteous prosecutor, he would have to present evidence of the 3 tycoons killing Professor Jo. But Prosecutor Choi didn't do that. On the contrary, he tried to come up with easily refutable points to prove that the 3 tycoons were completely innocent. Chang-ho's predictions had just been made and immediately received countless rebuttals and disagreements. Little did they know that, at the time of everyone attacking him, Mi-ho at the trial had sent the situation there to Chang-ho's live stream and informed the masses about the verdict. Her predictions about Big Mouth were 100% accurate. Therefore, the words of the prosecutor had been reported without missing a word on Chang-ho's live stream. When they heard the situation of the court, everyone felt very shocked and constantly commented, worshipping Big Mouth. But Chang-ho told everyone that he was not a prophet. The reason he could say the words of Prosecutor Choi was that this matter was a script that they had prepared in advance. The prosecutor and the 3 tycoons were just acting according to the script they had written in advance because they had discussed early on that today's trial must clear the 3 people of all charges. Their collusion seemed to be making fools of everyone. Since the beginning, they had manipulated everything. "You damn dog, immediately go and find him for me." Then, Chang-ho also told the online community about the truth behind the case of Professor Jo. A USB of the dashcam had recorded the entire act of killing Professor Jo. As long as the content was released, it could prove that the 3 tycoons were the murderers of Professor Jo. At this time, Ji-hoon, wearing headphones, heard Chang-ho's words and immediately signaled the prosecutor to suspend the verdict. Then, Ji-hoon angrily left the court. At this time, he suddenly remembered Hae-jin's request that no matter what, he couldn't let Professor Jo's thesis fall into Chang-ho's hands. Immediately afterwards, he forced Chang-hee to sign the divorce papers. "I clearly said that I will not divorce, then kill me, you idiot, wake up for me. If that thesis falls into Big Mouse's hands, you're dead." Finally, Ji-hoon gave the divorce papers signed by Chang-hee to Hae-jin. Hae-jin kept her promise and gave the thesis to him. However, Ji-hoon took back the papers and questioned her. Where was Big Mouth hiding? At this time, Hae-jin told him the hiding place of Big Mouth. Then the police were quickly dispatched to find Chang-ho, who was live streaming in the warehouse. The court at this time also ended the mid-session break. We announced the verdict. The evidence is insufficient. Because the evidence is insufficient, verdict of not guilty. At this time, the police also arrived at the abandoned warehouse. Don't move, raise your hands. Is the motive for murder mentioned by the prosecutor? Is it in the script? Then why kill Professor Jo? The man took out the hidden camera and put it in his mouth. After biting and breaking it, he dropped it to the ground. It turned out that the USB he had given her earlier was not the thesis. Ji-hoon angrily questioned her about where Professor Jo's thesis was. But he didn't know that their conversation had been uploaded to the internet. Hae-jin had deliberately framed Ji-hoon, wanting to make it clear that they killed Professor Jo for another reason besides the thesis. The group of 3 tycoons, who had just been found not guilty, saw this live video. This felt to the reporters like a bee finding honey. The 3 of them could only remain silent, not daring to say a word. At this time, Ji-hoon saw the camera hidden in the corner. "Keep it, we're done using it." The screen that had been live streaming was now opening. They saw Chang-ho, the person known as Big Mouth, sitting there leisurely. Then he looked at the familiar faces. The group of 3 tycoons was terrified to see this scene. Chang-ho got out of the car and walked to them, under the recording of the reporters, and said to them, "Hyren used the conversation just now to submit as evidence to the court. The verdict can be overturned." What's that expression? You're not accepting the appeal? Of course I'll appeal. Just as he finished speaking, he took out his phone and called the police to arrest Chang-ho. But at this time, Chang-ho told the reporter that he had been kidnapped to a mysterious mental hospital and had even met the culprit who wanted to kill him in that hospital. The person who manipulated this matter was Ji-hoon, who had just appeared on the live broadcast, and Prosecutor Choi in front of everyone. Then, the police came and took Chang-ho away. Mi-ho, at this time, also hugged her husband with pride in front of everyone. Then, his lawyer friend told him that his little brother Jerry had been saved. At this time, a doctor with the big mouth tattoo appeared at Jerry's hospital bed and gave him a piece of paper. Jerry read the contents and angrily tore it up, clenching it in his hand. After knowing that Jerry was still alive, this made Chang-ho was very happy. This time, he returned to the prison to put on his familiar clothes, under the cheers of his followers. Chang-ho calmly returned. "The reason I came back to prison is very simple. Just wait, Big Mouth, next time it will be your turn." The dignified mayor was now secretly hiding gold, wearing a satisfied smile. Behind Mayor Choi was a familiar room. It turned out that this was the room that Big Mouth used to move the gold here. The 3 tycoons, after being exposed for their crimes, hurriedly went to the chairman and begged him to take action to save them. If the court ruled that they had killed Professor Jo, the thesis would also be revealed. The chairman, hearing what they said, angrily took off his glasses. While he was lecturing the 3, Mayor Choi appeared, placing a document in front of the chairman. "This is Professor Jo's secret thesis, and this is the original. Now nothing can threaten you anymore." The group of 3 tycoons was now very confused, so the 3 people blocked the mayor and questioned him, "Why are you doing this?" But Mayor Choi advised the 3 to quickly confess and receive leniency. "Why do you keep forcing us to confess? You are also an accomplice." It turned out that after killing Professor Joe, the person that the 3 tycoons called was not Ji-hoon but Mayor Choi. At this time, he angrily honked the car horn. After calming down, he told his secretary to quickly create a traffic accident. But at this time, Mayor Choi changed his face and put all the blame on the 3 tycoons. Even that foolish Ji-hoon was going to publicly announce the thesis. All of these things he had to deal with himself. Now that the evidence had been cleaned up by him, he was not afraid of these 4 idiots who were always causing trouble. "Once you offend the chairman, your life will end from here. If you want to live, listen to me." That night, the chairman sat alone in the garden, burning the thesis to ashes. At this time, the director came to the chairman's side. The old chairman said that he had originally planned to leave it to her, but now she had to support Mayor Choi. Hearing the chairman's words made the director dare not believe her eyes. No matter how much she begged before, the chairman would remain silent. Yet today he was actively making her husband his successor. At this time, Mayor Choi went to the place full of gold, holding a photo of the thesis and even another USB. It turned out that what Mayor Choi said to the chairman before was just a lie. Today, he hid the thesis and the USB in this place full of gold. He then raised his thumb. Even the warden used this symbol. Perhaps this action has some profound meaning. At this time, Chang-ho was still looking for Big Mouth. He returned to the confessional in the cathedral and found a card in the Bible, so Chang-ho thought that Big Mouth was still in prison. Just when he was racking his brains to figure out who Big Mouth was, suddenly there was the sound of the door opening. Chang-ho was sitting in the cathedral, waiting for Big Mouth to appear. At this time, the sound of footsteps came from behind, getting closer and closer. He nervously turned his head. Chang-ho was very surprised when the person who appeared in front of him was the warden. "What is the truth of the thesis? Are you Big Mouth?" Now the warden told Chang-ho that in the past, those people who opposed him, if they didn't strangle themselves, they also got poisoned and died in this prison. Besides him, who could have done these things? Even the list of clients was switched by him. Now you should believe that he is Big Mouth. So where is the thesis now? But at this time, Chang-ho took the card and threw it on the ground, telling him that the things he did were not enough to prove it. At this time, the warden took off his coat and revealed the Big Mouth tattoo on his arm. However, at this time, Chang-ho smiled happily. "You are not Big Mouth. The owner never wears a chain. If you want to know the thesis, tell Big Mouth to come and see me, otherwise you will lose the real thesis." After saying that, he went outside and took out the recorder in his pocket. After learning that the warden was just Big Mouth's dog, he became even more excited. He believed that the day that Big Mouth was incarnating was approaching. At this time, Miho, as instructed by Chang-ho, went to visit Jerry. At this time, there was Jerry's voice behind her. Could it be that Chang-ho is misunderstanding Jerry? It turned out that he just went to the bathroom. After learning that he had never met Big Mouth, Miho put down the basket of fruit, left, comforted Jerry, and left. But Jerry, looking at Miho's back, revealed a deep look. A prisoner who had killed someone before had bloodshot eyes. His hands were also out of control. He began to stand up like a zombie, looking for the medicine that the doctor gave him, but that medicine had been drunk by it. He took the things of his fellow prisoners. Seeing that he was taking their medicine, the fellow prisoners desperately snatched it back. At this time, the fellow prisoner didn't care whether he was a murderer or not. He just wanted to get back the medicine that belonged to him. So, the 2 people fought in the cell for the medicine. The warden entered the room and separated the 2 people. "Maybe we have to change the medicine. The prisoners are hallucinating." It turned out that the 3 tycoons were using Professor Joe's prescription to experiment on the prisoners, and told the head nurse to continue using this medicine on the prisoners. This death row prisoner was sitting and trembling, his eyes bloodshot, looking at his fellow prisoner and clenching his hands. Miho also came to the prison, because recently there have been many cases of prisoners vomiting blood for no reason and losing their lives. So, the warden was looking for a volunteer to treat them. After hearing the news, Miho came to the prison to apply. However, when she entered the warden's office, she saw the head nurse and her colleague. The 3 of them were about to conduct an interview when they heard the alarm bell. When they arrived at the prison yard, they saw 2 prisoners covered in blood, clinging to each other. Finally, the death row prisoner was controlled with a stun gun, but the warden discovered that the death row prisoner was no longer breathing. Miho immediately ran forward, without any disdain for his prisoner status, and performed CPR. Finally, with her continuous chest compressions, she saved the death row prisoner. Because of her actions, the head nurse decided who was the chosen one. When sending them back, he asked Miho to accompany the prisoner to the hospital. "You can go back now. I will let you know the results of the interview later." As soon as they arrived at the hospital, Miho asked the doctor to test his blood, because looking at his blood made her think that he had used a large amount of drugs. However, after the test, the result was negative. Miho still didn't believe it, and, while the guard was on the phone, she took some of his blood. That night, she went to a pitch-black passage where a car was waiting. "Just take this tube of blood. I will give you the rest later." A former warden who used to call the shots was now being handcuffed by the prosecutor. But he still maintained that attitude, turning his head to find the person who had accused him. However, after glancing over the faces, he didn't see him. It turned out that the man was watching with his wife from above. Look carefully, don't miss anyone before revealing who Big Mouth is. Chang-ho took the recording to Mayor Choi and, without hesitation, accused the warden. So the prosecutor immediately took him away, wanting to use this method to force the real Big Mouth to show up. At this time, Mayor Choi came to find Chang-ho to introduce the new warden. It turned out that the new warden was the previous guard. Thank you for what you have done. I will never forget it. I still don't trust you unless you bring Big Mouth to me. On this side, the director, after getting off work, was holding a cup of coffee that she had just bought and driving home. After happily drinking a few sips of coffee, her mind became confused. Finally, she was blinded by the headlights of the oncoming car, leading to a serious accident. Miho saw the news on the TV and, in an instant, felt like she knew this person. The mayor, at this time, saw that his wife had an accident and hurriedly left the prison. Only Chang-ho, seeing this news, remembered his previous accident. Perhaps this was the revenge that Big Mouth was using, so he reminded his wife to pay attention to safety and not to go alone. Miho also remembered the accident that had just happened. Could it be that you think you have successfully completed the mission of killing two birds with one stone? Big Mouth and Mayor Do-ha. It turned out that Miho had gone to the morgue before and had the patient's blood tested, and she found the blood had been switched. As she recalls that time, Mayor Choi appeared to save her. So, Chang-ho knew who had switched the blood and was Do-ha, that damn dog. That is why he intentionally gave the recorder to him, and its purpose was to have Big Mouth keep score with Mayor Choi. To complete one shot to kill two birds, Do-ha will counterattack, Big Mouth will show his face, and after that there will be no other choice. In order to deal with Do-ha, he had to find him. A small jailer who had now transformed into a warden, he conducted a renovation on the prison as soon as he took up. He not only abolished the previous system, but also separated the distance between the warden and the prisoners. He does not allow violence and corruption to happen again. Finally, he installed suggestion boxes in the prison for prisoners to give their opinions to the warden. Seeing the warden's honest appearance made him very popular with many people. Everyone applauded this new, honest warden. After the applause ended, the warden announced that violent behavior had reappeared in the closet. He would search everyone, and it meant what it means to see how to play what. As the warden took off their clothes to inspect them, the scene was broadcast on camera. It turned out that this was the method that Chang-ho and the warden came up with. The purpose was to find out who had the Big Mouth tattoo, who was the real Big Mouth in the prison. But after a while of inspection, there were still no results. At this time, a prisoner took off his coat. The warden immediately discovered a strange tattoo on his body. Wait, as expected, there is a symbol of the Big Mouth organization on his body. Finally, the warden disappointedly gave the results to Chang-ho because after checking the entire prison, they only found 3 rats. The real traces of Big Mouth were still a hidden mystery. Because the results were not as desired, the chief wanted to interrogate them, but Chang-ho told him to observe the 3 rats in secret. Do not alert the snake in the grass. Only in this way can you have the opportunity to find Big Mouth who is on the run. Don't lose the big rat because of the tail. Are you ordering me? I put you in this position so that you know how to repay me. If you want to catch Big Mouth, then help me well and wait and see who the real Big Mouth is. Just to see that after he saw that prisoner, he respectfully bowed low. He angrily slapped him hard, questioning the person who used to be by his side, why he had betrayed him. But he accidentally pulled out the club of the warden next to him. I still show you some old feelings. Do you still think you are the warden here? Look carefully, now I am the warden. The new warden broke off cooperation with Chang-ho. Not only did he publicly point out the Big Mouth tattoo, but he also revealed Chang-ho's true identity, number 5247. The person we have always believed to be a fake Big Mouse is actually hiding here. It turns out that the warden's purpose was to destroy Chang-ho's face so that he would not receive the respect of the people and no one would obey him for Chang-ho. Only in this way would he not be able to boss him around. Then he told everyone that from now on, he would start a strict management mode. Not only would he cut down on eating time, but also double the working time until he catches the real Big Mouth. Things got really heated for Chang-ho when the warden put a target on his back, telling everyone that if they had any info on Big Mouse, Chang-ho was the guy to go to. The warden's plan worked like a charm. Everyone was pissed at Chang-ho. Not just for tricking them, but because his whole Big Mouse thing was messing with their chill time. They ended up beating the crap out of the ex-warden, demanding to know where the real Big Mouse was hiding. When he wouldn't talk, they just kept pounding on him. That's when Chang-ho stepped in and stopped one of the punches. Chang-ho knew that without the Big Mouse reputation, he'd be toast. You claim to be Big Mouse, you're a dead man. Nobody touches Chang-ho. Luckily, the prison kingpin showed up and knocked the inmate down with one punch, warning everyone to stay away from Chang-ho. Then, turning to Chang-ho, he said, "Maybe you're not Big Mouse, but I've seen your escape skills firsthand, so you better deliver on that promise you made me." After thanking the kingpin, Chang-ho went to find the warden, grabbing a phone to call Mayor Choi. He wanted to know why the mayor allowed the warden to blow his cover, but the mayor just made an excuse about being in a meeting and hung up, confirming that they were in this together. To catch Big Mouse, they didn't care if Chang-ho lived or died. If he didn't catch Big Mouse, he would just be a lowly warden again. Well, watch me. I'll show you how I catch Big Mouse. The man looked at the dead woman and used her finger to unlock her phone, finding a chat history with Mi-ho. He also discovered they'd been secretly taking blood samples in the prison. Turns out, Mi-ho had been getting blood samples for Hai-jin to test. The tests revealed a new kind of drug, and white blood cell counts 3 times higher than normal. She had been getting blood from prisoners showing symptoms, with the warden's help, and giving it to Hai-jin. But as soon as Mi-ho left, her ex-husband showed up at the house. Terrified, Hai-jin grabbed a kitchen knife to keep him away. But this guy was obsessed with his wife. As he got closer, Hai-jin accidentally stabbed herself. The ex was a mess, watching his wife bleed out. He didn't even notice when Mayor Choi came in. Choi just told his secretary to cover the guy's head and take him out of the room. Then, Mayor Choi saw the chat history between Hai-jin and Mi-ho, realizing they were investigating blood samples from the prison. Choi Do-ha immediately called the warden. "You got that?" "Yes, I understand. Capture Chang-ho and Go Mi-ho and get rid of them today." Meanwhile, Chang-ho was chilling in the yard, reading a book, when the ex-warden sat down next to him. The ex-warden confronted Chang-ho, angry that he'd teamed up with Choi Do-ha and betrayed Big Mouse, who had always helped him. But Chang-ho said he was only pretending to work with Choi Do-ha, and that his real goal was to help Big Mouse find Professor Seo's thesis. But Big Mouse still hadn't shown up to take revenge, so it seemed like Big Mouse wasn't playing ball anymore. All that effort and planning felt like a waste. "Tell me your plan." "Tell Big Mouse to meet me at the chapel tonight." The warden watched Chang-ho walk away and made his decision. Meanwhile, Jerry was in the hospital getting a call. "Okay, that's the way. Help me arrange the discharge." "Chang-ho, you are interesting." Right then, Chang-ho was sitting in the chapel, but Big Mouse was a no-show. Then, he got a text. Big Mouse wanted to change the meeting spot. Chang-ho rushed to the location in the text and found a totally dark room. When he heard footsteps behind him, he lit up the room with his lighter. "Are you Big Mouse?" After a month of guessing, Big Mouse turned out to be this section chief guy. "The only one who can help you is me." Chang-ho stared in disbelief at Mr. Gyen. No Park, honestly revealing his identity. But he still couldn't believe this guy was the legendary Big Mouse. But then No Park started spouting out stuff from the tarot cards, and Chang-ho finally believed it. Still, he couldn't understand why No Park wanted him in prison, especially since they'd never met before, and had nothing to do with each other. When did this start? Where did it all begin? Faced with Chang-ho's questions, No Park told him the whole story. Originally, Choi Do-ha was just a lawyer, and No Park had nothing to do with him. But when Chang-ho got involved with Gong Ji-hoon's information, No Park decided he needed to be silenced. If it wasn't for his help, you would already be a lifeless body now. And Chang-ho's value was to find Professor Seo's thesis. "Why are you so obsessed with that thesis?" "Because I want to find the real killer who murdered my daughter, so you need to see this through and take them all down." Hearing that No Park had used him to get revenge, slapped the Big Mouse label on him to draw the ire of guys like Gong Ji-hoon, and even put his wife in a bad spot with her colleagues, Chang-ho realized he was just a tool, and his life had been turned upside down beyond repair. After learning the truth, Chang-ho didn't know whether to thank the guy for saving him or hate him for ruining his life. Chang-ho calmed down. "Here's what I propose." At that moment, the warden was carrying out Choi Do-ha's orders to eliminate Chang-ho and Mi-ho that night. He staged a riot in the prison, then had his guys go after Chang-ho and Mi-ho. He would then report to his superiors that they were killed in the riot, pinning their deaths on the inmates. But the plan went sideways after cutting the power. They couldn't find Chang-ho anywhere, because the power could not be off for too long without alarming the police. So, the warden decided to take out Go Mi-ho first. At that moment, Chief No heard Chang-ho's proposal, frowned, then laughed and took a drink, making his decision. "You're rejecting my proposal? It's incredible. I'm just amazed. Now, get to the infirmary, your wife's in danger." It was totally twisted. The warden was trying to kill the prison nurse, and the one protecting her was a death row inmate who'd killed 9 people. The warden smacked the inmate with his gun, knocking him out cold. Then he pointed the gun at the pretty nurse. "You should go wait for Chang-ho over there." But before he could finish the sentence, a dangerous figure lunged at the warden. It was the nurse's husband, Park Chang-ho. He furiously pinned the warden down and started punching him relentlessly. When the warden was unconscious, Chang-ho calmed down and rushed to Mi-ho's side. Seeing she was okay, he hugged her tightly. But while they were still shaken up, Mr. No Park and the ex-warden walked up to them. Mr. No Park gave a signal, and the ex-warden took the gun and shot the new warden, ending his life. The other guard took off running after hearing the shot, but Mr. No didn't do anything to him. Chang-ho witnessed everything, feeling like this guy wasn't the big mouse he'd imagined. This big mouse seemed methodical and dangerous. And what Chang-ho didn't notice was that Miho, still in shock, was calmly looking at Mr. No Park. Then, the guard that ran off brought back a squad of armed officers to block them. It looked like the officers viewed them as rioters. If they surrendered now, they'd definitely be eliminated. Their only option was to call for help from the outside. At this moment, the one called Big Mouse made a decision. I accept the proposals you made, but you must keep your promise. So, Chang-ho pulled out his phone to call for help, and the person he called was his old rival, Gong Ji-hoon. Hearing Chang-ho's plea for help made him excited. Park Chang-ho, I could kiss you. Choi Do-ha, you're toast. What an emotional guy. Then Gong Ji-hoon brought the cops to the prison, running into Choi Do-ha outside. Seeing Choi Do-ha, he called Chang-ho. He brought the cops. So Chang-ho handcuffed Mr. No Park. Turns out, Chang-ho's proposal to him was to have Big Mouse arrested so that he could get more credibility and extract more secrets. The power of the Big Mouse label isn't enough anymore. Now, I need to step on that label to rise up and then take them all down. I have to survive. You will have to survive. At the same time, he also promised to help him get out safely. Choi, so this is who you really are. I really wanted to meet you, Big Mouse. Sure enough, after Big Mouse was arrested, the appeals against Chang-ho were dropped, clearing his name. Finally, he put on a new suit and looked totally cool. He even became a hero for capturing Big Mouse. In court, he was surrounded by reporters, but he was no longer a prisoner. He was back to being a failed lawyer. From now on, he would use the weapon of the law to fight against those who had wronged him. I will become a great and righteous lawyer. Once the CEO makes a move, it will be a contract worth billions of won in stock value. Gong Ji-hoon got so hyped he knelt down. Thank you, Chairman. He couldn't contain his excitement. He stood up and put his thumbprint on the contract. Now all they needed was the chairman's signature for it to take effect. But then the director walked in and told the chairman to turn on the TV. The chairman turned on the TV and saw Chang-ho, just released from prison, holding a press conference. Chang-ho told the reporters about Professor Seo's death and how some chairman was involved. They have a mastermind running things. Who are they? I'll just say it's a very important person. Even though Chang-ho didn't name names, Gong Ji-hoon held the contract, unsure if he should ask the chairman to sign it. But he couldn't let the bird in his hand fly away. Just as he was getting the courage to ask the chairman to sign, the director butted in. Park Chang-ho is trying to bail out Big Mouse. Is he trying to go against me? Seeing the chairman's anger, Gong Ji-hoon said he'd go take care of Chang-ho. Great! Then he pulled out the contract, shamelessly wanting the chairman to sign it. The matter is not resolved yet. Wait for the results. Then Mayor Choi showed up to see the chairman, making a request that he believed was righteous, which was to let Chang-ho bail out Big Mouse. Hearing Choi Do-ha's words reminded the chairman of something from the past. Because he always talked about justice, he was now separated from his colleague in death. The chairman didn't know if he was hallucinating, but Choi Do-ha now looked a lot like that kid. What happened to him later? He's dead, Grandpa. Finally, Big Mouse was bailed out, causing a swarm of reporters to surround him. Meanwhile, the chairman was furious after seeing this news, and Choi Do-ha and his wife were chilling by the pool. Finally, Chang-ho took No Park to the restaurant he used to run, because it held so many memories of his daughter. But Chang-ho noticed the restaurant sign was a Big Mouse symbol. Once inside, No Park took out the necklace his daughter used to wear. It was a cross necklace that now only had the circle remaining. Seeing the way he looked, Chang-ho didn't want to bother him and left the restaurant. But as he went down to get in his car, was that Chief No Park, or was there another twist coming? The intro offered a very vague answer. In the previous episode, Mr. No Park, the one claiming to be Big Mouse after being bailed out, had just returned to his old restaurant when a terrible explosion happened. Chang-ho didn't believe what he was seeing, so he went inside to investigate the cause of the explosion. The result was a man in black suddenly appeared, wanting to kill Chang-ho right there. In the nick of time, a man arrived to rescue Chang-ho. But looking closer, Chang-ho was shocked by who it was. The one who came to rescue him was his little brother Jerry, the one who had always idolized him. He was wearing a fancy suit, standing in front of Chang-ho. I should have met you sooner, I'm sorry. What's going on? Can it be seen that Mr. No Park is Big Mouse? If he really is Big Mouse, then did he die in the explosion? Going back to the previous episode, it could be seen that before the explosion happened, he opened the refrigerator in the restaurant, then the explosion happened. Could he have hidden in the refrigerator and escaped? Also, why would the guy who turned evil ask the chairman to have Chang-ho bail out Mr. No Park? It wasn't until Mr. No Park went back to his restaurant and saw his daughter's cross necklace that he realized something. Going back to previous episodes, when Miho was investigating Professor Seo's thesis, the director also happened to have this cross necklace. So, it's possible the director is Mr. Se, No Park's daughter. This also explains why Mayor Choi wanted to have Mr. No Park released. That's why Chairman Kang's and the Choi couple's expressions are so different. This is unbelievable. Maybe the director is Mr. No Park's daughter that he has been searching for. And one more thing. Between Jerry and Mr. No Park, who is the real Big Mouse? Or are they both subordinates of Big Mouse? Moreover, has the real Big Mouse not appeared yet? Of course, this is just my own speculation. Everyone please wait for the official development of the latest episode. The Big Mouse we've been following for 2 months just showed up and got blown up, unless he's the main character in Penthouse. Otherwise, it's hard to die and come back to life. Chang-ho looked at his body and could only regretfully leave the morgue. Then, unwilling to accept it, he went to the scene of the explosion. He wanted to see with his own eyes the place where Mr. No Park lost his life. But at this moment, a man in black suddenly appeared out of nowhere, aiming a knife at Chang-ho. In the nick of time, a man suddenly appeared and subdued the man in black. Chang-ho saw the man in black walking towards him and was very surprised. The one who came to rescue him was his little brother Jerry. I should have told you sooner, I'm sorry. What's going on? It turns out Jerry just joined the Big Mouse organization. Seeing that Chang-ho still had many doubts, Jerry didn't explain anything to him. Instead, he looked at his watch and told Chang-ho to come with him to a place, because there was all the answers that Chang-ho wanted to know. So, as if possessed, Chang-ho followed him to a chapel. In the chapel, No Park's funeral service was being held. Then, at the chapel, No Park's last words were shared. It turned out that he was the leader of the Big Mouse organization, so Mr. No Park had done extraordinary things, but because of this, he would also encounter unpredictable dangers. If you are watching this video, then something bad has happened to me. So, in order for the Big Mouse organization to continue operating, he decided to leave the position of leader to a young person. His ability has not only been verified by me, but he also has insightful thinking and commendable courage. From now on, the leader of the Big Mouse organization will no longer be me, but Park Chang-ho. These are my last words and also my last order. Hearing that the position of Big Mouse was given to Chang-ho, the ex-warden unwillingly stood in front of everyone and questioned Chang-ho. Did you film this, right? What? You set up this whole thing just to swallow the entire organization, didn't you? What are you talking about? Why would I do that? I filmed that video. A voice came from outside the chapel. Chang-ho turned around and saw it was his lawyer friend. It turned out he was the one who helped Big Mouse film the farewell video. Then, he turned to Chang-ho like a stranger and asked, Mr. Park Chang-ho, make your decision. Will you accept this position? The man grabbed a billiard ball from the table, threw it as hard as he could at the warden's face. Then he tied him up with duct tape and put him in a car, pouring gasoline all over it. The lawyer held up a torch and slowly walked towards the warden. Just as he was about to drop the torch, ready to burn him alive, he got a call from Chang-ho, which saved his life. It turned out that Chang-ho had agreed to Mr. No Park's wishes, becoming the leader of the Big Mouse organization. But this didn't sit well with the core members of the organization. The ex-warden, originally the second in command, led a group of people to create a new force to oppose Chang-ho. He even acted on his own without reporting, and his first target was to assassinate Choi Do-ha to avenge Mr. No Park. Because only Choi Do-ha could have killed Mr. No Park, there are still some people in the organization who don't accept you. The ex-warden is the representative of the opposition. If you don't resolve this, the organization will be a mess later on. Soon, the ex-warden took his men to find Choi Do-ha, and without a word, immediately pulled out a knife and charged at him. But those two were no match for Choi Do-ha. After a struggle, those two were beaten to a pulp. But Choi Do-ha unfortunately injured his arm. Finally, he clutched his bleeding arm, revealing a hateful look in his eyes. And because of the ex-warden's reckless actions, Chang-ho's plan was disrupted. Because his revenge plan wasn't just about killing Choi Do-ha, it included his wife too. He still hadn't investigated the source of the blood samples, or even the truth about Professor Seo's thesis. So his final warning to him was, my revenge plan is not as simple as yours. I will expose all the sins of those people in a place full of light, burning their souls in a sea of fire. That is how I will take revenge. But his actions alerted Choi Do-ha and his wife. Soon, Miho received a call from her lawyer. The director was starting to destroy the hospital's research lab. All that could be seen was a pile of scrap being burned. All the items in the research lab had been destroyed. Then the director went directly to the chairman, using her husband's accomplishment of eliminating Big Mouse, to request the stock transfer agreement that he was going to give to Gong Ji-hoon. Please give it to me. Are you crazy, Chief Cha? Finally, the chairman accepted the director's request. He transferred the stock transfer agreement that was originally intended for Gong Ji-hoon to the director. Just as Chang-ho was trying to figure out a plan to take them down, he happened to see on TV that Choi Do-ha wanted to run for mayor again in the next election. This gave Chang-ho a great idea, and Gong Ji-hoon, furious that a tasty piece of meat had been snatched right in front of him, received a call from Chang-ho. "Oh, is that Lawyer Park? Why do I have the honor of you calling me? I want to hold a press conference. Are you coming?" Chang-ho was seen confidently holding a press conference, and the content of the press conference was, "I will run for mayor in the upcoming election as an individual." Then Chang-ho called Gong Ji-hoon out and asked him to support him for the mayor's seat. Because Chang-ho knew that Choi Do-ha could become mayor because of Gong Ji-hoon's support and hoped he would introduce him to Chairman Kang. He was sure that as the next Big Mouse, Chairman Kang would not refuse. Thinking about how the Choi Do-ha couple had snatched his piece of meat, Gong Ji-hoon didn't hesitate to agree to Chang-ho's request and led him to Chairman Kang. "Nice to meet you, Chairman. I am Park Chang-ho, a guy with nothing but wants to run for mayor." He also hoped to receive Chairman Kang's support. In order to make this deal a success, he even took out a list of key figures in the Big Mouse organization to give to the chairman. It turned out that after the real Big Mouse died, Chang-ho outwardly agreed to take his position, but they used the excuse of protecting his family to turn his wife and father-in-law into hostages. So that's why he came here to ask for the chairman's help. "You mean you're going to play both sides? If the chairman can keep it a secret, I believe I can succeed. My birthday is coming up. If you don't mind, I'd like to invite you and your wife." "Thank you, Mr. Chairman." Sure enough, after the chairman looked at the list in his hand and weighed the pros and cons, he decided to help Chang-ho. Even a cunning schemer like Mayor Choi couldn't see through Chang-ho's purpose this time until they left Chairman Kang's office. But he knew Chang-ho wouldn't be able to rely on the chairman. Finally, seeing the friendly handshake from Chang-ho, he gave a cold smile and turned to leave. And Chang-ho, in order to thank Gong Ji-hoon for his nomination, told him a secret that he had always been searching for. It turned out that his 100 billion won was not taken away by Big Mouse at all. After Gong Ji-hoon heard this, he was a little confused. "Then where is it? Could it be you? Search carefully again, far away in the sky, close in front of your eyes." At this time, Mi-ho accidentally found an old man with dementia in a nursing home because he kept saying that he was Choi Do-ha's uncle. After hearing this, Mi-ho took a childhood photo of Choi Do-ha to ask the old man. But after seeing the photo, he burst into tears and kept saying, "He's dead, he drowned, Do-ha is dead." Knowing that Choi Do-ha was impersonating someone else, Mi-ho and her father immediately told Chang-ho this news. It turned out that Choi Do-ha's real name was Cho Sung-hyun. His grandfather was Cho Hui, who used to be by Chairman Kang's side, because he always emphasized to Chairman Kang that his chemical experiments had many risks. Then suddenly one day, Cho Hui strangely committed suicide, and his father was sent to prison for disposing of waste. But not long after, his father also committed suicide in prison. So he wants to get revenge, there's no other possibility. So Chang-ho immediately told the former warden Choi Do-ha's real identity and asked him to quickly go to the nursing home to bring the old man here. Because only with the old man in hand can he overthrow Choi Do-ha in front of Chairman Kang at any time. But Jerry didn't trust the ex-warden, so he secretly followed him to see if he would tell Mayor Choi this secret. However, he was relieved after he saw him successfully take the old man away. Suddenly, a blow from behind came, knocking him unconscious. The ex-warden was seen putting Jerry in the trunk and driving away. And on Chairman Kang's birthday, he took out a will from the safe, reluctantly looking at it carefully. Suddenly, his subordinate came over and told him that his son had sent him a birthday gift from abroad. But Chairman Kang was not happy to hear this news. On the contrary, he angrily told his subordinate to quickly throw his son's gift out. At this time, the chairman remembered the birthday gift that he would never forget in his life. "My son is not human, he is a demon. Even if I die, I will never allow him to return. Don't blame me. If you are to blame, then blame No Park." With 2 gunshots, our male lead Chang-ho passed away just like that. Do-ha looked at the live screen, happily enjoying wine and revealing a sinister smile. It turned out that Chang-ho and Mi-ho were still wearing elegant dresses, preparing to attend Chairman Kang's birthday party. But after receiving the phone call from the new warden, he had no choice but to leave Mi-ho alone to go to the party first, while he drove to see him. However, as soon as they met, Chang-ho was tied tightly to a chair. He even broadcast it live to Do-ha. It turned out that the two of them had long colluded to kill Chang-ho. Under the order to shoot from Mayor Choi, he finally killed Chang-ho as he wished. Jerry saw the scene before his eyes and immediately called his sister-in-law, telling Miho that Chang-ho had died. Hearing that her husband had been assassinated by Mayor Choi, her eyes turned red. She turned around and looked at his back. She lost her composure and ran to grab his collar. "Did you kill my husband? Is it you who killed him, Miho? Are you okay?" Mayor Choi also quickly arrived at the scene of the shooting. Seeing the bloodstains that had not yet dried on the ground, he once again revealed a savage smile. Then, he asked where Chang-ho's body was, but the new warden told him that the body had been burned to ashes. Choi didn't suspect anything. After all, he had personally seen Chang-ho hit by 2 fatal shots. It turned out that the reason he wanted Chang-ho to die in this place was that Chang-ho had investigated his true identity. He had to hide his identity for 30 years to approach Chairman Kang just to avenge his father and grandfather. Now, suddenly, Chang-ho appeared, blocking his way and even investigating his true identity. How could he be at ease? Choi Sung-hyun, his childhood name. However, their conversation was transmitted to Chairman Kang's room, and the person sitting next to him was the person who had been shot dead, Chang-ho. It turned out that this was a plan that Chang-ho and the new warden had discussed. The purpose was to let Chairman Kang see clearly the true identity of Mayor Choi. At this time, the chairman remembered the name Choi Sung-hyun. After learning that he had come to avenge him, he expressed his gratitude to Chang-ho. He even promised him that in the future, no matter what Chang-ho wanted, he would fulfill it, even the position of mayor. He meant to help him. However, they didn't know that at this time, Mayor Choi had received a call and knew everything. Then, he came to the chairman's house. While his subordinate was pushing the wheelchair, Mayor Choi secretly replaced the subordinate and then closed the valve of the transfusion. With this series of operations, the chairman clutched his chest and felt very breathless. At this time, he realized that his subordinate had become Doha at some point. "My father and grandfather died in much more pain than you, so you should also feel a little bit what it's like to have everything taken away." Until the end, when the chairman desperately looked at Mayor Choi, he lost his life forever. Finally, Mayor Choi and Chairman Kang's subordinate came to his study together, opened the safe, and exchanged the will. His part was also in it. Before the notarization procedures are completed, don't reveal the information that the chairman has died. I understand. The culprit who killed Chairman Kang today was wearing mourning clothes and hypocritically appeared at the funeral. Ji-hoon was dissatisfied and asked him to quickly take off his mourning clothes. "I told you to quickly take off the mourning clothes, you damn bastard. Honey, let's pay our respects to the chairman first." Under his wife's persuasion, Ji-hoon agreed to turn around and pay his respects to the chairman. Outside, he immediately went to the secretary, who was always by the chairman's side, and asked what the content of the chairman's will was. However, the secretary was already on the same boat as Doha and had secretly swapped the will, so he only said that the will was still in the hands of the lawyer. He didn't know the specific content and left quickly. Then, the group of tycoons reminded that if Chairman Kang did not divide his assets, then his assets would be inherited by his son abroad. However, Ji-hoon immediately denied this conclusion, because Chairman Kang was a very strict person and would never leave his assets to that devilish son. At this time, Chang-ho, after hearing the news, took a series of core members of the organization to the funeral. After paying his respects to the chairman, he went to Doha and whispered to him, "I know you killed him. Just wait. Your true face and your devilish soul will be exposed by me." At the same time, Miho went to the prison again to visit the person who had saved her life. She asked him what public service work was all about and why the prisoners always contract leukemia when they participate in it. After hearing her questions, he couldn't help but shed tears, because he knew that only Miho truly cared about the prisoners. But he couldn't push her into a dangerous situation, so he had to get up and leave, as a farewell to Miho. He hoped she could find his brother and sister, because he himself didn't know if his mother's bone marrow transplant surgery was successful. So, Miho and her father found his sister and brother and asked them if their mother's surgery was successful. "My mother is dead." "What? Hurry up. Please don't come looking for me anymore." With much doubt, Miho returned home. While doing her personal hygiene, she suddenly felt that something was wrong coming from her nose. Suddenly, she remembered the words of the killer. "Do you bleed when you brush your teeth, or do you suddenly have nosebleeds? I know I have leukemia, and I know I can't live much longer." After old man Doha's crocodile tears, his true identity was exposed. Even so, he still looked very awake. Not only that, but Doha also laughed secretly behind that false face. After Chairman Kang's funeral, the lawyers rang. They were only eager to see how the assets would be divided after the chairman's death. Looking at it, they want to make some amendments, but Rung is on the honest side. So he said that there is no way to amend it. Even if you bribe him, Chairman Kang's assets were really a cheese for big rats. And some rats didn't want fairness. Lawyer Park was now freed like a kite. In other words, he had been eliminated from the game. Chang-ho went to see Ji-hoon and warned him about the errors in the will, but he was still subjective because he had checked it himself. A team came to fix the air conditioner, but they were there to install hidden cameras, and the person behind them was Chang-ho's organization. In that room, a meeting was held between the sons and grandsons of the Chaebol, including Ji-hoon and Doha. The lawyer began to arrive as the executor of the chairman's will. Next to him was also lawyer Kisu, who was the legal representative of Chairman Kang. At this time, Ji-hoon realized the mistake because this person was the legal representative, not lawyer Jung. In fact, Chairman Kang changed his will 1 week before his death. Hearing this, both sides began to reveal their ugly faces. The representative began to announce the will, which included the division of assets, and the entire company and shares were handed over to Joo-hee. After hearing this, everyone looked at the new chairman. Even the remaining shares of the chemical branch belonged to the second-in-command, Jae-hoon, but he had nothing left because it had now fallen into Do-ha's hands. The two looked at each other deeply, and Ji-hoon began to lose his temper. He rushed up to kill Do-ha. Do-ha smiled secretly and told his wife to go home. Ji-hoon really suspected that Do-ha had forged the will. He started taking action. The meeting began to be chaotic, while old Do-ha stood calmly, smiling secretly and watching the play. Seeing this, Chang-ho knew the whole story. Do-ha had taken all the shares and the imported chemical branches. All of this had been predicted by Chang-ho before. Previously, Do-ha had been too strong, almost equal to Chairman Kang. Miho received the blood test results, which were not very good. She was invited to a small hospital. She was still hiding this from her family. Do-ha continued to play the role and claimed that he was just a sheep. Remembering Chang-ho's words, Ji-hoon began to call him and make an appointment to meet. He now needed Chang-ho's help. A rat who has reached the end of his rope is willing to sacrifice everything to get it. It seemed that Ji-hoon had disguised himself as Do-ha, while the real Hyun had played in the river and fell into the river to his death. Chairman Kang had known about this in advance, but the person who took action was Do-ha. After hearing this, Ji-hoon lost his temper, and he believed that if he said his real identity, everyone would lose their temper and rebel. Chang-ho wanted them to help him become the mayor, and then Ji-hoon would not have to lose a single penny and could also solve Do-ha. But now Do-ha was calculating and wanted to run for mayor instead of running for a national assemblyman. His wife suspected him but didn't dare to say it and only said that she had never suspected him once. The next day, he announced on TV that he wanted to be the mayor, causing a large crowd of interviewers and journalists to surround him. His purpose was too clear, which was to prevent Chang-ho from becoming the mayor. Chang-ho now wanted to turn this election into a grave to bury Do-ha. The election mobilization activities were in full swing. Chang-ho and Do-ha were everywhere. The two competed to call more people to vote for them. Miho went to the test alone, so the doctor informed her that she had acute cancer and was in the final stage. Because she needed chemotherapy, she needed to make an appointment for the next treatment for outpatients. Because of the long-term chemotherapy, she needed to prepare herself psychologically. Everyone started celebrating because Chang-ho's election was progressing well. Deep down, Miho wanted to cry, but she tried to pretend that she was okay. She looked around at everyone and then gave a regretful smile. Finally, seeing Chang-ho, she had to shed tears, but she quickly wiped them away. In the evening, they started going to the sea, and Chang-ho advised her to go back because her alcohol tolerance may have reached its limit. The little one fell, but he managed to catch her. He teased her and offered her a piggyback ride, but looking at her face, he began to become tense. Miho pretended to know some secret that he had lied to her about. He also asked her back, and the little one said, "How can people live without lying?" Chang-ho also acknowledged this and said that he was Big Mouth. At this point, the smile had disappeared. Uncle Park had died, and he became Big Mouse. Her father-in-law also knew because he said everyone listened to him obediently. If he wasn't Big Mouse, then what was he? He also didn't want to do it, but life pushed him. Who knew that he would be Big Mouth until Do-ha paid the price? Chang-ho tried to convince Miho to believe him. She interrupted him and believed that he would become a good Big Mouth, one who punishes the wicked and makes a living by bullying the weak. After she finished speaking, she wanted him to carry her on his back. The two carried each other on the beach, and Chang-ho really remembered his old office. At that time, he always worked overtime because he really liked that office. After all, it was his first office, although his work couldn't even make up for his lunch. The next day, Ji-hoon had made an appointment with everyone in the group, but no one came. He said that Do-ha was an imposter. The old man said that Do-ha had made an appointment for everyone to come, but it was in another place. He entered the company while they were having a meeting, but no one seemed to care much. Joo-hee even demanded to hold a large shareholders meeting to dismiss Ji-hoon. The reason for the dismissal was due to the controversies about his personal life and business management. Jae-hoon began to recall the matter of his dismissal. He planned to reveal Do-ha's real identity to Joo-hee, but unexpectedly, she knew in advance that her husband was Hyun. Choi Jo-ha had shown his cards to his wife last night because he knew that he would be exposed anyway. He said that he did this to get back what his grandfather had been robbed of. The only way was to make him be recognized. If she knew that he was Hee-soo's grandson, Chairman Kang would never give him any opportunity. With just his acting talent and a little bit of tears, he had successfully persuaded his wife, who was losing her temper. Even the matter of marrying her was just a game he had set up. Joo-hee warned him not to dig into Do-ha's wound anymore, then things would not stop at losing management rights. She also intended to bury him. Ji-hoon was not afraid at all. On the contrary, he challenged her, saying that the lawyer's capture of Big Mouth was causing a sensation among young people. That speech would be worth 10 in this election. Ji-hoon was too angry and went to talk to Chang-ho and gave him a USB. These were the privileges that Choi Jo-ha had when he was in office for companies in the forum at his private residence. Ji-hoon had done everything he could. Chairman Kang had a son, and now he was in Texas, USA. Maybe he didn't know about his father's death because he wasn't seen at the funeral. If the son returned and filed a lawsuit, he could get back a portion of the assets. That would be enough to reduce the power of Ju-hee and Do-ha. At this time, Ji-hoon was happy, but he didn't know how to start talking to him because he was like a demon, but he still had to find him anyway. Then, he sent his subordinates to find Chairman Kang's only son. The reason for breaking off relations with his son was that he was a serial killer. Moreover, someone else went to prison to replace him, while he fled to the United States. Miho put on makeup very carefully, and then took a picture with her father while he was sleeping. She looked at the picture and smiled, but suddenly there was a phone call that startled both of them. There was a notification for the person on death row that they had mentioned before, Yeon. He was in the negative pressure room, and was then transferred to the bed of a seriously ill patient, but then death would surely find him. She walked straight into his bed. She called Yoon, and he recognized her. He asked her about his mother. She said that the bone marrow transplant was successful and her health was recovering well. After hearing this, he no longer had many worries, so he gave up again. Miho cried all day that day. Yoon's sister told her that her brother was not a serial killer. A very rich madman had said that he would help her mother with the surgery on the condition that Yoon take the blame for him. After hearing this, everyone knew that it was Kang's son. But Miho didn't know about that case yet, so she couldn't put the pieces together after that. Yeon was branded as a bad guy and left unfairly. After hearing this, she went straight to see the director Ju-hee. She vowed that before she died, she would clarify the crimes that they had committed. Miho would make Ju-hee realize how wrong she was. She would make that person cry and watch what true despair was. Miho brought homemade food to Chang-ho because his face looked so tired, so she brought him food. Opening it up, the food inside was all kinds of vegetables, fruits, and all kinds of nutrition. Chang-ho said to wait for him to finish this matter soon. She looked at him, and he had lost a lot of weight in just a few days, like a skeleton, because he was preparing for the discussion, so he was in this situation. He didn't have time to eat. He was working hard, so he had to eat fully. But because the opponent was Do-ha, he didn't want to neglect for a moment to defeat him, so staying up all night was probably not enough. Chang-ho commented that what she made was the best, otherwise he would probably sleep on the street tonight. He was also planning to stay up all night today. Miho wanted to see his face a little because when he was in prison, the two of them had been separated for so long. He turned to apologize to her, and after completing what they had planned, he would be by her side forever. No matter where she went, he would definitely follow her. Even though they couldn't live for 10,000 years, they could be together for 50 years. He believed that he could give her everything that the two of them had never been able to do. The next day, Do-ha began to study the situation again. He began to go to see Yeon-suk to ask him for some things. Do-ha didn't like making decisions after hearing something. Just showing goodwill was enough. And if it was what he wanted, he wouldn't have to regret the decision. Yeon-suk began to smell something scheming. What Do-ha wanted was for Chang-ho to withdraw from the election. The controversies about Chang-ho flared up again on television. Ji-hoon contacted Chang-ho and reported that Do-ha was also sinking his opponent into the mud like last time. Chang-ho was now quite difficult, so he would fight. The next day, he began to get dressed up. Miho's subordinates had investigated the lakeside. From the outside, it seemed to be just a farm, but what fish farm was guarded so strictly? The owner used to be in charge of security, importing chemical rays. Miho began to meet with her subordinates, and if they succeeded today, Chang-ho would win the election, and if not, they would lose. For Chang-ho, the time was also counting down, and Chang-ho would be the first to speak. Everyone in the voting room began to introduce themselves. Miho began to send troops to the fish farm and also monitored Chang-ho through television. A convoy of cars crashed straight in and caused a brawl. They punched each other, wrestled into the lake, and so on. The boss of that fish farm was still gambling, so the henchmen went in to report to him, but one of them was too scared and escaped, while the other hid under the table. The gang began to pull in and haul him up. Chang-ho asked Do-ha about the forum, and he was sure that he knew because he was a key member. He tried to corner Do-ha, but time didn't allow it, even though there were 11 seconds left. Miho called out the manager's name, and he claimed that he wasn't the manager. She handed him a bottle of water and told him to calm down. After hearing her say that she came because she was curious, he began to stand up proudly until she asked what the farm had to do with NK chemistry. He confessed that the sewage pipe led out from the chemical factory, and it was the drinking water under the groundwater. Miho said that the bottle of water he was drinking was taken from there. After hearing this, he began to beg to go to the hospital until she drank the bottle of water. Then, Miho took out a bottle of water from there and said that if he didn't confess, he would have to drink that water. It seemed that they had used that wastewater for the fish farm. One of the ones who got away called back to report that the matter had been exposed. On the stage, Chang-ho began to be forced into a corner. Do-ha's hands had begun to be awkward when the sewage matter was exposed. They couldn't report back to Do-ha because it was live. If this fish farm were exposed, then Do-ha would definitely go down. Chang-ho began to talk about the cancer rate here being 20 times higher than in other places. The program team asked him to change the topic, but he still wanted to let them hear everything. He began to push Do-ha to be involved in the imported chemistry case. He also knew that his company had developed strongly due to a new substance that was developed called NF9. He didn't deny the fact that automotive semiconductors and various electronic devices had achieved rapid development, but there was some information that during the purification of NF9, a large amount of radioactive material had leaked in 1992. There was an article summarizing the content. Just before he died, he announced the risk of radioactive leakage of NF9. Hearing this, Joo-hee began to sit uneasily. Do-ha didn't know what else to say when this was about to be exposed. The owner of the fish farm admitted that the groundwater was indeed wastewater from the purification plant. It was wastewater created during the purification of NF9, and there was a lot of radiation in it. The farm was built as a way to cover it up. All of the fish had been completely eliminated 100%. Miho began to have her subordinates check the paperwork, and they found out where the money came from. Now, they would all go to the TV station, even though it was being broadcast. Suddenly, another group came. Miho's subordinates told her to run first. Do-ha's hands were awkward because Miho's group was approaching the TV station. Miho sent the video to him and wanted the video to be revealed on television. Park was also Do-ha's henchman, and they were blocking Miho's car. Do-ha's henchmen began to pass by, smiling smugly, but unexpectedly, the policeman said that he would escort them so they could rest assured. The other group's car had to stop at the checkpoint, and the ones who were blocked were them. Miho's father called her and reported that Chang-ho was doing very well, making her very touched. The Bitcoin scammer was also going to vote, and he felt that it was a violation of his rights. The young man began to send the video to her and said that when Miho spoke, she should play the video, which was the final part of the discussion. And the Bitcoin scammer also stood up and asked Chang-ho a question. He mentioned the $5 billion that he received from him. He admitted that he was being investigated for fraud. He also brought a book with serial numbers of 10, 0 banknotes with a face value of 50, 0 which was equivalent to 500, 0, 0 in the $5 billion that he had given to Chang-ho. Chang-ho was now being forced into a corner. Miho ran quickly to the TV station and joined the hall. Do-ha saw her and began to worry. She stood up and asked him a question, and Do-ha said that she was Chang-ho's wife, so she should be excluded. She said that she stood here, not as a supporter of candidate Chang-ho, but as a victim of imported chemistry. She talked about the broken underground water pipe, and she had been infected with radioactive material and was diagnosed with end-stage lymphoma. After hearing this, Chang-ho was shocked. She had also prepared an accusation video. The video was broadcast live from the video of the manager admitting that the wastewater was contaminated with radioactive material and contained a lot of radioactive material. The farm was just a way to cover up dumping the water into the sea. Now, that case was causing tens of thousands of citizens to suffer or die from cancer. Do-ha began to blame his subordinates. As Chang-ho came out, the reporters flocked to him. He called his wife, but she didn't answer. She must have turned off her phone because of the reporters bothering her. He rushed to see her, and Miho still seemed very calm. Compared to the fact that she would die, she liked him very much. She was afraid that he would not be able to live without her in the future, so she regretted very much that she could not try harder. He could erase the injustice, but that didn't help her at all. Chang-ho promised that he would do everything he could. Now, the people supported a lot of things that Do-ha had done before. They wanted to investigate the imported chemistry case. As soon as he got out of the car, they started flocking to him. Do-ha also had to go to the room to take a statement. He wondered who was behind that one-way mirror. He wanted them to try and prove it with their abilities. Tomorrow, the sun would rise again, and Do-ha affirmed that he would become the mayor at that time. He would be able to get rid of all the grievances. Chang-ho wanted Jae-hoon to interrogate Joo-hee to find Mr. Kang's son. If they wanted to force them, they had to create a new trap. Do-ha was called back by Chang-ho and asked about Chairman Kang's being buried. He thought that he had been cremated. Ji-hoon would dig up the grave, perform an autopsy, and prove that this was a murder. He heard that Chairman Kang had a son, and Ji-hoon received the consent of that person. If Do-ha knew about this, then he would do everything he could to stop it. Joo-hee was still very awake and told him not to doubt her husband anymore, and she admitted that it was her fault. She went back and told the driver about this and would report it to the mayor. Because they were conducting an investigation, they had no other choice. He then contacted the chief of investigation and reported back. Even after 72 hours of interrogation, the prosecution still didn't issue an indictment for candidate Do-ha. The next day, he said that he would investigate the imported chemistry case thoroughly, and the former director, the court for Do-ha after the election, was coming up in 2 days. Do-ha's vote rate was still very high. The polling place was opened, and the two sides were very close. Chang-ho needed more than 7-8 votes for the victory to be in his hands. After hearing this, Do-ha's whole team was full of cheers, while Chang-ho's team was full of regret. After Do-ha was confirmed as the mayor, everyone was disappointed. Miho had bought things to celebrate, but now it was things to comfort everyone. She was still very cheerful and also bid farewell to everyone. If Do-ha were convicted, then he would not be cut off first. Suddenly, a box was sent over. No one dared to open it, afraid that there was a bomb, so Miho boldly took it and opened it. Inside was a piece of paper with the sender being Joo-hee. In it was the phone that Do-ha used, which would be important evidence in court. They didn't know if this was real because there was no way she would send them this. Chang-ho looked over and confirmed that it was Do-ha's. Do-ha began to speak to the whole country after his victory. Thanks to the wisdom and courage of everyone, he was able to be elected as mayor. He promised to do it again carefully and would repay everyone's trust with results. They called Joo-hee back, and they needed proof that it was Do-ha's phone. She agreed to be the one. Do-ha was still unaware, enjoying the joy of victory. Miho had only drunk 1 can of beer and was already drunk. Chang-ho intended to leave, but she grabbed him and wanted him to stay here. She had thought of her ending and wanted to hold his hand and then go to sleep. Her father brought hangover medicine. Chang-ho went to meet him, and he also began to cry because of his daughter's ironic situation. When the trial was about to begin, Miho drank the suppressant medicine again, but they were worried that Joo-hee had not arrived yet. Do-ha asked about the machine and asked if it was his machine, and he demanded proof to prove it. The prosecutor said that he had a witness to prove that the phone belonged to Do-ha. They requested a suspension of the trial. Dae-hwan suddenly admitted that he had used that phone before. Chairman Kang used to use it, but after he died, Dae-hwan took over. He said the last day he used it was the 16th. Then he read out the phone number of a person and confirmed that the owner of it was sitting in this trial. He called, and it was Do-ha's number. Do-ha was now out of the area because no one would use their phone to call themselves. Not only that, but Dae-hwan also remembered the text messages in it, and if necessary, he would say them here first. In fact, when Joo-hee took the machine, it was recorded. Do-ha and Chief Cha began to plan. The trial was adjourned, and Chang-ho really didn't know what to do when he ran out of ideas. Joo-hee was now tied up in a soundproof white room. The doctor came with a syringe that contained poison. Joo-hee tried to struggle in vain. Do-ha was acquitted by the court for lack of evidence. Someone came to report that they couldn't find Joo-hee. Chang-ho also guessed that something must have happened here. Miho asked Do-ha where she was, and she warned that if Joo-hee disappeared, she would not let them off. Miho collapsed, and when she woke up, she saw herself in the hospital with Chang-ho. She said that she was too tired and wanted to sleep very much. He told her to just sleep, and they would talk more tomorrow. Then she went to sleep with her heart stopping. He was very happy during the time she was by his side. Do-ha practiced diving, and as he slowly floated up, he saw Chang-ho. He said that he came because he had taken over this factory. Chang-ho was now the owner of it. Now he revealed to Do-ha that he was Big Mouse. Hearing this, he froze for a moment, but he was still not very afraid of him, even if he was Big Mouse. He scolded him, and the two sides began to exchange words. Chang-ho asked him if he had ever thought about the pain of the people he killed. Suddenly, Do-ha was vomiting blood. He then looked up at Chang-ho. It seemed that he had just swam in his own radioactive water that he had created. Laws are created to prevent afraid from killing each other, and laws are created to save people. Now he didn't need them. That was Do-ha's mistake. In the end, Joo-hee was rescued, and she exposed the truth. Do-ha's henchmen were sentenced to 10 years in prison and probation. A large sum of money was distributed by Chang-ho to rescue organizations and orphans. Chang-ho gave everyone happiness, but no one gave it back to him except for Miho. The end. Thanks for watching.